across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.6:03 a.m. Top of the morning to you. Happy Sunday, one and all. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A big 4 hours to come. Breaking this morning, political insiders have told this programme that Sir Keir Starmer will be gone in less than a year. That's right, folks. It is months, not years. So who will replace him? Andy Burnham? West Streeting? Well, the dark horse candidate, or Ginger, to be more accurate, Angela Rayner, is on manoeuvres and sounding out support, offering cabinet jobs to people that can help her get into number 10. Meanwhile, given the chaos next door at number 11 and yet another U-turn over tax rises, should Sir Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves before the budget on the 26th of November to save the economy and to save his premiership? Now, my priority for the next 3 hours, 4 hours in fact, is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Who's on the phones today, Dean? There you go, Solopay's on the phones. And listen, we had a full switchboard yesterday, so get your views out there. You can also text the word TALK and your message to 87222 or send us a voice note. And this is not a drill. The monologue is back in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The dangerous open borders extremism of the Green Party revealed. That is a very special Dolan's Dispatch with two exclusive guests. That's happening at 8 o'clock. Let me tell you, today's Dolan's Dispatch, James, it might get me cancelled, right? And there's a brand new engineer on the show called James. I could get cancelled at 8 o'clock, and you know something, James? Good. And what we'll do, James and I will go to the pub. Now, we'll do what Alan Brazil always does when he gets cancelled, which is go skiing. Oh, I'm going skiing. And he gets rehired a week later because he's a blinking genius. I think we should stay on focus here, folks. We've got a radio show to put out. 6:05 in the morning. It is Sunday. I've got a dream team today. I've got Davis, who's putting out the TV content. So if you want to watch the show, just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Dean Spencer is the executive producer. This is the guy that produces the magic, I can't lie. This guy would get top ratings if a monkey was on the microphone. And Solopay's taking your calls. She's on top form this morning. She's had 3 coffees. 0344 499 1000. She delivered a full switchboard yesterday on the BBC and Trump. Let's do it again. Who would you like to see in number 10 replacing Keir Starmer? As I've said before, insiders have told this programme Starmer will be gone in less than a year. So who replaces him? And will it make a blind bit of difference? A really busy 4 hours. Great to have your company at 6 minutes past 6. Whatever you're up to, you might be staggering home from a night out, and if so, more power to you. You could be in the middle of a night shift, you could be on your way to work, or hopefully just snoozing in bed. Either way, we're going to keep you informed and entertained. A big 4 hours, and as the saying goes, let's talk. And as the saying goes, let's talk through the papers. And we've got to today's front pages. The Sunday Mirror. Kelly, I am proud of my curves. This is Kelly Brook, who is a model and TV presenter, who is appearing in the brand new series of I'm a Celebrity, which we shall preview later. It's not a bad lineup this year. I was offered and I said, I'm so sorry, but I'm far too busy on Talk. Exclusive first interview. Angela Rayner, I will keep fighting for ordinary people. Hello. Leadership bid, anyone? Former Deputy PM calls on Labour to end arrogant tittle-tattle. Angela Rayner vowed to fight for her constituents as a backbench MP. After infighting this week, the ex-Deputy PM urged Labour to unite and end arrogant tittle-tattle. What she said there, just to translate for you folks, is she said that any talk of her running to be the leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister is complete nonsense. The translation is, I want to be Prime Minister and I will be within a year. Sunday Express, bloodbath on High Street if Labour piles on the tax. Daily Star, Kelly, my shower power. Basically, what that means is a celebrity's going to have a shower on telly and everyone will be watching. That's I'm a Celebrity, which I do think might be quite a good one this year. We'll keep a half an eye on it. Dean and I think that a percentage of you will be watching. Text me if you are going to watch I'm a Celebrity. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. The Sunday Telegraph, Angela Rayner plots move against Starmer, former Housing Secretary, already offering cabinet jobs as turmoil engulfs Labour. What an absolute clown show our democracy is. That a disgraced woman that was not upfront about her stamp duty and her location of where she lived and where she didn't live can just basically decide she'll be Prime Minister and hand out cabinet jobs. BBC must get its house in order. PM to tell Donald Trump, and Reeves to hit families with death tax by the back door in budget. Sun on Sunday. Star and Club Girl at 3 a.m. Ali G. So this is the Ali G actor and comedian Sacha Baron Cohen, who cozied up to a Kylie Jenner lookalike, 28 years his junior, in a 3 a.m. chat. Well, I don't want to get sued by Ali G, but it might have been more than a chat, Will Kingston. Live in the studio with me, broadcaster, entertainer, journalist, and dropper of truth bombs, Will Kingston. Good morning.
Entertainer. I love adding that into the mix. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
You are an entertainer because you're massive on TikTok.
Am I?
Yeah, I saw a clip of you the other day, and I thought, not for the first time in his life, this man's gone viral.
Dearie me. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to be with you. I am going to pull back the curtain and be a bit cheeky. It is extraordinary how you can get into the studio at 5:59 and pull out the polished introductions that you manage. If the bigwigs at Talk are watching and listening at this time of the morning, there is, I think, an interesting addition to this show where basically it starts at 5:30 a.m. from when you wake up, and there is a camera in your bedroom and they just follow you as you zoom through up the stairs into the studio, put the mic on and get going. I think that would be wonderful entertainment.
Well, that is ideal, isn't it? It'd be like the Truman Show. I've got a camera on me from, boiled eggs, quick coffee, on the motorbike. The truth is that it's because of Terry Wogan, because Terry Wogan said that he wasn't happy if he got to the studio any earlier than the news bulletin.
Well, as usual, you've pulled it off with aplomb.
Well, listen, I tell you why, because this show has essentially put itself together today because we've got really three big stories. We've got, in particular, obviously the economy is a big one, and the leadership contest, and then a Talk breakfast exclusive later about the extremism of the Green Party. And the reason why we're going to talk about that at 8 o'clock is because the Green Party are winning power at a local level and will likely accrue quite a lot of votes at the next election. And don't forget, they're chomping on the ankles of the Labour Party for support on the left.
Don't forget, there are some polls which are putting them ahead of Labour and in second place in the polling. Can you imagine a world in which you had a reform government and the Greens is the, His Majesty's loyal opposition?
And it's the first Green Party in history not to give two figs about the environment. They are, they're more communist than compost.
I'm not sure about. I think they gave up on that whole greenie thing about 6 months into their existence, and then just became full-on commies.
Yes, it is socialism in a green mask.
Yeah.
So let's get to the lead story of the day, and this is a Prime Minister on the brink, and it's not an exaggeration, Will Kingston, is it?
No.
And what about this messaging via the Sunday Mirror, which is, of course, one of the Labour supporting papers? Exclusive first interview, Angela Rayner, I will keep fighting for ordinary people. This is a denial, which is not a denial at all, about wanting the top job.
Yeah, of course. Well, look, she got sacked. She's well with it. She deserved to get sacked. But if I was in her position, I'd be going after Keir Starmer as well. She is... Look, I think we all agree she's not an intellectual. I think, we all agree.
Stephen Hawking, she is not.
She is not. I was trying to put it diplomatically, but I think that's well said. Her renters' rights, employment rights bill is going to destroy productivity. But
that's a double whammy for the country, isn't it?
It is.
Basically creating more homelessness and wrecking growth.
But she is incredibly popular with the Labor base. They see her as authentic. And we live in an age where people demand authenticity from their politicians, which is one of the reasons why Starmer is so detested. Don't rule out her being the Prime Minister in 6 to 12 months' time.
Well, I think so. I think she's the only one that's got all of the elements that are required, which is to satisfy the left-wing base. Well, not required to be Prime Minister.
Yes, make that clarification clear.
Required to win. And do you remember when the Tories went through a phase of just electing leaders that they liked and agreed with rather than somebody that could win an election? And I would give you possibly Michael Howard and Ian Duncan Smith as the sorts of leaders that were ideologically in tune with backbenchers and the membership, but who the public were, found unengaging.
Yeah.
Angela Rayner, because this is what we talked about it a few weeks ago, and we were saying, is there a Boris figure waiting in the wings? Because back in the day, Boris was always, the leader in waiting. Yeah. And I don't think that's Wes Streeting. And I don't think that's Bridget Phillipson, and I don't think that's any number of people in the cabinet. It is Rayner.
Yeah, it is.
She's got the X factor. She is box office, Will.
Well, again, and we need to make this very clear to the audience, largely who would be not in the Rayner camp, I would imagine. She is, again, what she would offer in terms of being a Prime Minister, I think would be very poor. But again, the whole working class upbringing, kind of coming from, a humble background, made good, all that sort of stuff. It plays with the Labor base. They love that sort of stuff in a party which is increasingly now just dominated by champagne socialist lefties.
Yeah.
She is actually the one person who still represents that old Labor, which, to be honest, died out a long time ago. She's the last vestige of old Labor, and so she's very popular for that reason. Let's not rule her out.
No, and she knows how to make a headline. She's tribal, which is, isn't it? It's unappetizing, but it has cut through. So that's, for example, an example would be when she called Tories scum.
Yeah.
Now, that was a reprehensible, appalling thing to say, but we all talked about it, and of course, the base loved it.
Yep.
And you could argue, not just regarding the shade of her hair colour, but there is something Trumpian about her, potentially, from the left, which is disruptive. No ... given, right? Fearless and a troublemaker. And here she goes again. Why has she popped up on the front page of the Sunday Mirror as a lowly backbencher when the Prime Minister is under pressure? Yeah,
but the thing is, we've known now for months that Starmer will not be the Prime Minister come the next election. It is purely a question of when, not if.
And we're hearing on this programme less than a year from well-placed sources.
Yeah, I still think after those May elections is most likely.
Yeah.
You could be in a really interesting position after those May elections where the Conservatives and Labor both get thumped, and you could have a double leadership challenge going on at the same time. It is very possible after that May election that you could see Badenoch get punted and Starmer get punted and have two new leaders coming in at the same time, which would be, for politics nerds, a lot of fun.
It really would, and here's my prediction.
Whether it's good or not for the country, who knows?
No, well, who knows? See, I think here's what needs to happen. We cannot have another Labour government. No. And very oddly, with the parliamentary arithmetic, if the right remains split, there's still a chance that with the support of the SNP and Lib Dems, we could have a hellish leftist rainbow coalition in 4 years' time. I mean, can you imagine a more left-wing administration, supported potentially by the Greens, who I'll be exposing at 8 o'clock in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, running the country? I mean, that would be it. Do you think you could find a shed for me in Australia to live in?
Well, unfortunately, the Australian government isn't much better, Mark. They've
got Labor as well, haven't they?
They do, and basically the leader is more or less the same as a Starmer-like person, same types of net zero policies, same types of socialist economic policies.
And they've got mass migration now, haven't they, in Australia?
They're taking more people than the UK are by a considerable amount.
Wow.
This is why it's interesting for me as an Australian living in the UK. The same trend line is playing out there, but it's just 5 years behind. They're going to experience what the UK now has realised is fracturing this country. In terms of the leadership, it will be very interesting to see what happens over the coming months. But the fundamental point needs to be made, and that is that any leader that comes in will still be hamstrung by the same ideology that is preventing us from growing the economy, preventing us from closing the borders, and continuing the problems that this country faces. So whether a leader changes or not, I'm not sure it would make much difference.
I think you're right, and I would only correct you slightly. I'll put a footnote to your wise remarks, which is they might change a bit for the worse.
Yeah.
Because in order to get elected, that leader is going to have to become more left-wing.
Go to the left.
And you'll have more wealth taxes, which sound great on paper, but they've never worked because the rich flee.
Yeah.
And you will have, endless benefits, a bigger state, open borders.
Yeah.
But, the
point.
few good noises that we're hearing from the government at the moment are from the Home Office and Shabana Mahmood, who's getting a little tougher on the Boris wave of migrants. That's 1.7 million people, and others who are going to have to wait longer to get benefits and receive indefinite leave to remain. That's great.
But
My viewers and listeners love it.
But I can never
party hate it.
Yeah, I can never see the Labor membership voting for it for precisely that reason.
Well, this is exactly it. So listen, folks, lots more to come. More front pages and a fresh new political headache for Keir Starmer. This is Talk.
I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but actually the NHS is getting very good at dealing with strikes. This is the...
It's had to adapt, Roy, surely.
Yes, it has. And what they're doing now, previously what they did was they said, we will do nothing during the strikes. Everything gets parked for safety reasons and so on. The NHS now has a new chief executive, Sir Jim Mackey, who runs a very successful, or used to run a very successful trust up in Northumberland. He's taken an entirely different view. He says, we will continue business as usual.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
26 minutes, don't worry, you're not late for work. 21 minutes past 6 in the morning. It is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. A very special Talk Breakfast exclusive at 8 a.m. in which we will expose the full extremism of the Green Party in a special Dolan's dispatch. Front pages are with us, and the Sunday Times: don't use licence fee cash to settle with Trump, BBC bosses warned. BBC bosses were under pressure last night not to use licence fee money to settle President Trump's claim of defamation. Trump confirmed yesterday that he is planning to sue the corporation over what he calls corrupt editing, and said he would raise the issue with Sir Keir Starmer this week. Illegal immigration tearing us apart, says the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. She's vowed to end Britain's golden ticket for asylum seekers by forcing people arriving illegally to wait 20 years before they can apply for permanent settlement. Well, let me fix that for her. There should be no opportunity to live in this country if you've entered illegally. The message needs to be sent to those criminal gangs, doesn't it, Will Kingston, that if you break into the country, there's only one direction, and that's out.
This is the thing. Until you actually deal with the fundamental legal framework that has been created, which now makes it so difficult to A, deport people, and B, stop people from actually entering the country, you can just tinker around the edges. And this is more tinkering around the edges. Until you leave the ECHR, until you ditch the Human Rights Act, until you get out of the Refugee Convention, this is more tinkering. To your point, you just need to say, if you get on a dinghy in France and you try and enter the United Kingdom, you will never, ever stay here. That's the simplest answer, but they can't say it.
No, because it's all about messaging, and we should actually deploy the Labour terminology from the years of Tony Blair and the Home Office under John Reid, which is to create a hostile environment. Everyone thought that the Tories came up with that term. It was actually a new Labour government that did.
Interesting.
That it should not be a welcoming place for people that have no right to be here. And let's not forget, Will Kingston, jumping the queue for those who genuinely do deserve refuge in this country.
That's right. There are women and children languishing in refugee camps, as you know, the 90% of those dinghies are filled with 20-year-old blokes who are, by and large, not refugees. They're economic migrants. So it is fundamentally unfair. You mentioned, that's interesting, that new Labour terminology. I saw that Rupert Lowe said something similar on Twitter.
Oh, well, that's far right now, isn't it?
That this week, and he was called far right and a racist and all that sort of stuff. And he came back in his usual excellent way and said, basically, I don't care. We need to solve this problem, and you're not going to solve this problem if you continue just to tinker in the way that this government is.
Yes, we've got obviously open borders at the moment, which is destroying the economy, making us less safe and dividing our society. You've got very ethnic-specific crimes that are happening in this country, like the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
And then you've got, for example, a story of a young girl that was murdered by her parents. And the reason why it happened is because the authorities didn't want to be accused of being racist by delving deeper into what this family, and in particular this evil father, was up to. Of course, he was a man of colour. And the issue we've got is this fear of being called racist is destroying the country, Will.
Yeah.
But is that word, the R word, now losing its power?
Yeah, it is. I was speaking about this in the media last night, and I found it really hard to talk about this story when it was being explained on air. I was and the details of what this young girl went through. I was quite emotional, actually. It was really difficult to talk about. And the utter cowardice, and there's no other word for it, the disgusting cowardice of people who let this stuff happen because they're afraid of being called racist, because they're afraid of being called, or because they are thinking about cultural sensitivities. It is disgusting cowardice. I actually thought, after the reckoning of the rape gangs, the country was finally say, you know what? Forget this cultural sensitivity nonsense and focus on the safety of women and children. But it turns out that in some of the institutions, in some of the police forces, amongst many judges, they still don't seem to care about the safety of women and children. They care about their own reputations and being seen as being culturally sensitive in polite society.
And I don't know about you, but I'm not excited about the Home Secretary's new plan to tighten rules on indefinite leave to remain and the receiving of benefits for people that have entered the country illegally. Great piece by Professor Matthew Goodwin, friend and colleague of yours. And he has written a piece in the Mail on Sunday today saying it won't happen because the political will is not there within the Labour Party to do what Denmark did.
Yeah. Yep, no, that's exactly right. How hard is it to say that if you're not a citizen of the United Kingdom, you don't get benefits? Like,
Yeah.
I say this as an immigrant. I would be thoroughly embarrassed to take money from the British government if I'm already here as a guest. That's the benefit you receive, is the right to be here. And yet over 1 million people in this country are not citizens and are claiming benefits. It is absolutely extraordinary. And that's something which we can't forget as we talk about illegal immigration. In some weird respect, I actually think the Labor Party do want to talk about illegal immigration to an extent, because legal migration still remains the bigger problem, and you're getting so many people who don't contribute, who don't integrate, who continue to flood in legally. And if they talk about stopping the boats, which they're not going to do, then they don't have to talk about really remaking the country in their particularly warped multicultural image nearly as much.
Well, most definitely. And always in life, you must follow incentives.
Yes.
And the issue you have with our open borders is the incentives to come here.
Yes.
And it is benefits, it's housing, it's dentistry, it's accommodation, it's hotels and all the rest of it. And that's why you must end the incentive. And then you need a deterrent, which would have been Rwanda, which it was revealed just a few weeks ago that figures within Labour circles now regret binning.
Yep.
And ultimately, I mean, the boats I think it is the number one issue facing this government, because the public is so angry about it. Clearly, Shabana Mahmood would love to end those illegal migrant crossings. Do you have any hope at all that it could happen? Because that's Labour's only hope to stay in power.
No, I don't, because again, I don't think they're willing to change that legal framework which enables all this stuff to happen.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to play the, I'm Australia, we fix this problem card.
Which
but
you
I'm
did
going to
in
play
2013.
Yep, I am going to play the I'm Australian, we fix this problem card. What happened in Australia? And so basically,
Sovereign borders.
Operation Sovereign Borders.
Brilliant.
The equivalent was to Calais, was Indonesia, where you'd have people smugglers organising boats. They're a bit bigger than dinghies because the seas are a bit rougher to get over to Australia. The Navy would intercept those boats before they hit the shore of Australia, and they were taken immediately to this tiny little country called Nauru. They were put in detention centres, and they basically said, you stay in that detention centre until you go back to, whatever country it is that you came from. And you know what? In the space of a few weeks, the boats stopped coming. This is your point. If you create that disincentive, you solve the problem in a matter of weeks. A matter of weeks. It's not hard. It just requires political will.
However, is there a mood of optimism in the country at the moment, in one sense, Will, that the conversation around immigration has shifted drastically, and that if you talked about deportations or not giving benefits to asylum seekers, or making them wait a decade for indefinite leave to remain, you would have been considered, to the right of, a sort of Second World War dictator. But now it's mainstream thinking, and even the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has got the memo. She may not be able to deliver, but she knows now what the messaging should be. Illegal immigration is tearing us apart, says Mahmood, and that is a Labour Home Secretary. So things are shifting.
Yeah, they are. They're not shifting because of the leadership of politicians. They're shifting because of brave voices on social media and stations like talkTV who are pushing to change this discourse. I'll tell you something. I just came back from 2 weeks in Australia, back from a mate's wedding. They are about 5 years behind the UK in terms of that discourse. So the stuff that we're talking about, the stuff that I will say in British media, which is now in the Overton window, mainstream, it is multiculturalism has failed. Diversity is not our strength. There are considerable issues that need to be answered around Islamism and ethnic and cultural enclaves in this country that are not integrating. When I said that stuff in Australia, bit too hot, bit too edgy.
That's very surprising. I thought that the Australians were very un-PC.
No, that is a myth. Australia is where the UK was about 5 years ago, and so the stuff which we're talking about, you mentioned you might get cancelled today. I don't think you will get cancelled, but you may very well do if you're saying this stuff in Australia, and unfortunately, they're going to face the consequences in 5 years' time, like the UK are facing now, if you don't stand up and face uncomfortable truths when they need to be faced.
And how is it that Australia has regressed in this way, given the huge success of Operation Sovereign Borders under, I believe it was Tony Abbott from around 2013 to 2018?
Yeah. So this is, and I'm Tony will be the next guest on my excellent podcast Fire at Will, coming out this Wednesday. Make sure you catch that interview.
What a booking! And that man is a rock star politician.
He's fantastic. But this is where you do need to separate legal and illegal immigration. Australia has still sorted the illegal immigration problem.
You don't have the boats.
Don't have the boats. But you have, I think, something like 400,000 to 500,000 new migrants coming every year. So the Australian population is increasing much more rapidly than the UK population is, and that is as a result of migration.
Wow, I mean, the statistics there. So, because the population of Australia, 25,000?
It's
Sorry, million? 25 million?
27 odd million.
27 million, and then you get 400k in a year.
4 to 500k. It's decreased slightly in the last 12 months, but it was kind of 500k.
And are they all sort of elite? Are all surgeons, doctors, engineers, and Welsh choir boys?
Again, I don't think the composition and the mix is as... basically, you're getting more from Southeast Asia, more from China, more from India.
Yeah. Better qualified, more skills?
Yeah, on balance, yes. But you still have the problem of creating effectively these little cultural enclaves that don't integrate, and people, similarly to the UK, are going, this just does not feel like the country that I grew up in. So I guess in a weird sort of way, I guess British people can take comfort that this isn't just a problem the UK is facing. There are cowardly politicians who are letting this happen across the Anglosphere.
What's amazing is that I think Mahmood is being disingenuous with this Danish plan because ultimately there isn't, like you mentioned, the will within the party to do what Denmark did. And also logistically, if we're in the ECHR, as you said, if you've got that legal framework, then there's so little that you can really do to make a change. Now, what Denmark did is they started temporary resident permits, which is a really smart thing, because at the moment here it's a blank check to stay. Anti-ghetto laws, which would obviously immediately be called racist within Labour circles. Migrants can be moved away from areas where more than 50% of residents are non-Western. So what they do is they go into these ghettos and these housing estates and they break it up, and they evict people. And they use force to do that. They're breaking up these parallel communities. Asset confiscation. Migrants with assets over 1,200 quid must contribute to their upkeep. So if they've got money, they have to spend it. Mandatory Danish language tests. Now, this is actually, I think, the silver bullet, because very few people speak Danish, and it's a hard language to learn. And that is the best way. The issue we've got, Mahmood says, oh, we'll make sure they can speak English. Well, English is the most spoken language in the world. So it's not going to be such a powerful lever as you, if you've got to say, look, you've got to speak Danish, good luck with that.
I imagine the test won't be too difficult. It'll be, can you say hi? What's the weather like today?
Actually, you just have to say, I love Keir Starmer.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because wasn't there a few illegal immigrants were like celebrating Starmer's victory after the election, going, we love Keir Starmer?
Well, that, and also when he started to let people out of the prisons early, if you recall that, he started to open up the jails.
Thanks,
Keir. The fundamental point which people will remain furious about is notwithstanding these changes, you are not detaining illegal migrants. They will continue to be walking around the streets. They will continue to be a risk to society. And you know as well as I do, Mark, as well as the viewers and listeners know, that pretty much every single day now we hear another story about an illegal migrant who has either sexually assaulted someone or has been involved in some sort of violent incident. It is happening every day. And that will continue to happen under this plan because they're not being detained. Well, A, they're still going to get here, and B, they're not going to be detained when they do get here.
Most definitely. You've got three things: the economic cost, a divided society, and danger to our citizens, all of which are provably true. Tony says, hi Mark, this is Tony from West Yorkshire. Good morning, Tony. First text of the day. Great to have your company. With regard to the BBC, yes, I do think Donald Trump should sue the BBC. And to be honest, I don't think it will come out of our pockets, as the BBC will most definitely have liability insurance. Nick in Loughborough. Mark, unless Labour stops the boats and abandons net zero, it matters not a jot who becomes PM. They'll be toast.
Yeah.
And Rachel has messaged the show. Good morning, Rachel. Rachel says, hi, Mark. A few issues this morning. Firstly, I'm a loyal listener to your weekend shows. Well, thank you, Rachel. And as someone who's constantly late, I love you even more hearing you arrive at work with only minutes to spare. But please don't suggest the ginger one, Angela Rayner, could be in number 10 soon. Armageddon! I don't want to think about that at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Rachel, thank you for that. Listen, this show is all about your opinions. 03444991000 is our phone number. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. More front pages next, and a fresh news scandal at the BBC to add to all of the others, which has further enraged Donald Trump. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:39, it is Talk Breakfast, more front pages. White House fury at monster jibe in showpiece BBC lecture. Now, the row between the BBC and Donald Trump has escalated further after it was revealed the broadcaster commissioned a fierce critic of the US president to deliver its prestigious and flagship annual lectures. Dutch author Rutger Bregman used the high-profile event to draw parallels between Trump's America and, you guessed it, the rise of fascism in 1930s Germany. It's so boring, isn't it? Trump's Hitler, Nigel Farage's Hitler, Will Kingston, a fresh new headache for the BBC, notwithstanding the fact that two separate flagship programmes had edits on a Trump speech that were deeply misleading. Here we go again.
Yeah, look, if Trump was to sue the BBC, it would ultimately be British taxpayers' money. I don't want to see the British taxpayer lose even more money. But the fact of the matter is the BBC do deserve this. They are institutionally biased. What they did with regard to those edits of that Trump speech was one of the most egregious breaches of journalistic ethics I can recall. So he would be well within his rights to sue. The bigger thing, Mark, here is in 2025, when you can get information from so many different sources across radio, TV, online, social media, there is no justification for a state-funded broadcaster in 2025. Even without all of this sort of bias, I don't see any justification for it. I think they should be defunded completely and be forced to stand on their own two feet.
Well, that's a very interesting thought shared by many of my viewers and listeners. Here is Donald Trump speaking on Air Force One about his fury with our national state broadcaster.
What BBC did, nobody would even think a thing like that was done. They actually changed the words coming out of my mouth. Well, we'll sue them. We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready to take...
Well, I think I have to do it. I mean, they've even admitted that they cheated. I mean, not that they couldn't have not done that. They cheated. They changed the words coming out of my mouth. The people of the UK are very angry about what happened, as you can imagine, because it shows the BBC is fake news. Plus, you and I knew that for a long time, but we didn't know it was this fake.
Have you raised the issue with Sir Keir Starmer?
I have not, but I'll call him. I'm going to call him over the weekend. He actually put a call into me. He's very embarrassed by it.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer is quite a good Trump whisperer, isn't he? He's managed to convince Donald Trump that he's competent at the job and charmed him with his rather sort of snake oil language. But can Starmer, fix this particular crisis?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, Trump is, if nothing else, the comedic genius of our age. I just can't stop laughing when he speaks, to be honest.
It's gold.
There's nothing actually there that was, like, in and of itself funny, but just the delivery, I actually can't stop laughing. Everything he said was true. There was nothing there that he said that was untrue. And his tactic, and he's done this since the 1970s, this will never go to court, but what he'll do is he'll get 50 odd million or something out of the BBC.
Yeah.
Will be British taxpayers' money. And this is a very clear case of defamation. Like, there's no two ways
Well,
about
I'm glad
that.
you mentioned about it coming from taxpayers' money, because I think what should happen is that it should come from the resources of the BBC. And if it is £50 million, then what they have to do is go to Parliament and explain at a select committee how they're going to cut their budget to accommodate that cost.
Yeah.
It cannot be that the licence fee goes up. What you can do is cancel a couple of woke dramas, fire a couple of ridiculously overpaid celebrities, and also slim down that middle management who are on six-figure salaries as they swan around in Armani suits, fueled by the Colombian marching powder.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point. Dare I say it?
Because the only thing, I say, the team here, the senior management at Talk, the only thing they're on is Nescafe Gold Blend.
Yeah, that's
exactly plenty.
But this raises an interesting point. Now, I've been fortunate enough to never make it into the BBC studios, but I have actually been into the...
They'd have you arrested, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
They'd call security.
They would. I have been into the ABC studios in Australia, and basically the same thing, same left-wing woke ideology.
And paid for out of general taxation?
Yeah, so it's the exact same principle.
Yeah.
I was shocked at how big the offices were, how many people there were, how many screens, how many computers. Like, Talk is a very lean operation, because you have to be a lean operation as a media business in 2025. It's not as easy as it was in the 1980s, that's for sure.
Correct.
But I imagine the BBC would be exactly... Look, we're seeing that if you're watching on YouTube, it is an enormous building. There would be so many people who would be doing next to nothing. The amount of waste in that building would be extraordinary.
Yep.
And if they had to stand on their own 2 feet, then they would have to slim down pretty quickly, because you cannot run a modern media business without it being super efficient in this day and age.
Well, if you
unless you're getting heaps of taxpayer money.
All that. If you scrap the diversity officers and close down BBC Verify, which is a creepy Orwellian misinformation propaganda machine, then that would already save a few billion. I mean, honestly, with a budget, I think their income annually is over 5 billion, 5.5 billion a year.
Yeah.
3 and a bit billion of which comes from the obligatory tax, which is the licence fee.
Yeah.
There's no way that they can't cut their cloth accordingly. Joe Rogan, he's the biggest talk show host in the world with his podcast, which effectively is recorded in his garage.
Yep.
And he has one producer called Young Jamie.
Does he only have one producer?
Yeah, that's it. It's Jamie. And then he's got his management, and their job is to divide up all the enormous amounts of money that he makes.
Yeah.
Right. But it's a two-man team, and it's the biggest show in the world.
Yeah, and obviously the people who would listen and watch Joe Rogan would dwarf the numbers that the BBC would get, which again, I come back to my fundamental point. No one's been able to give me a justification for why you need a state-funded broadcaster in this day and age. This is a relic of a time when you had really limited numbers of radio stations, and in order to get the news, you needed to have the government actually putting something out there. You just don't need that now. There is no justification for it when people can go to Netflix for their entertainment, or they can go to Talk or wherever for their news. Like, you just don't need this. It needs to be entirely defunded.
Well, it's going to be £180 from April, which is an enormous amount of money.
It is.
It's at least, based on my rubbish mathematics, 15 quid a month, which is a really big direct debit. That's more than Netflix. What's Netflix? About a tenner a month?
Yes,
11 quid?
I think it's maybe a fraction more, but yeah, basically.
Yeah. Less than that.
But the other thing which was really concerning in this whole scandal, literally a few days after the whole Trump editing thing blew up, they put out a social media post of Rupert Lowe asking a question in Question Time, or Prime Minister's Questions, I should say, where he was discussing the reintroduction of the death penalty. And the caption for the tweet, I believe, said something like, Rupert Lowe has suggested that the death penalty be reintroduced for overseas and foreign criminals, when he clearly said in the video, domestic and foreign criminals, as in they were trying to make out that he was a racist. Yeah. This was days after they've just been accused of being institutionally biased. It goes to show that they will not learn. They are institutionally captured.
And the issue you've got is that axing the people at the top is not going to make a difference to the culture of the organisation. And when you employ that many thousands of people who all think the same thing, because it's collective groupthink, isn't it? And they've got these orthodoxies, which is that if you're a man in a dress, you're a woman. We've got to have net zero because the planet's going to blow up in a couple of days' time. And then, of course, that open borders are a empathetic thing to do, and diversity is our strength. Those are the mantras that you have to sign up to work there. And if not, you won't get hired. And if you get found out as having those opinions, you're out.
Yeah, and if anyone watching or listening thinks that Mark is being hyperbolic, he is not. I've spoken to several people who used to work at the BBC, and they have literally said, if you don't hold those views, you will be booted. You need to sign up to those particular left-wing ideologies. Yeah. And isn't it so interesting that these organisations that promote DEI are the ones that have the least diversity of thought and opinion? They may tick all the DEI boxes, they may have a particular ratio of particular ethnicities, particular genders, particular sexual orientations, but they all think the same way.
And you know something? Even the ethnic diversity is not consistent, and you see that on adverts as well, which is that certain people of colour are actually not represented by the BBC because they don't tick enough boxes, such as East Asians, such as people from India and that sort of background. And Jewish people are. Did you know Jewish people are ethnic?
Yes,
right? But they don't tick any boxes at the BBC.
Quite the
so even the diversity isn't diverse.
Quite the opposite.
For example, it's exactly the same at US universities, where there was a guy that wrote a book about how American Asians can't get into Yale and Harvard because they're too smart. And they basically get A's in all their subjects, and because of that, they get overrepresented. Well, either Yale is the best in the country or it's not. So they've actually got quotas against certain ethnic groups at American universities, and apparently that's woke.
Yeah, we've spoken about this before on the show. It is actually not that difficult to understand what's happened on the left in the last 20 years. And it's very simply, they look at the world through this matrix that says that there have been, throughout history, oppressors, and throughout history, there have been the oppressed or victims. And if you're in the oppressor class, you need to be punished now. And if you're in the oppressed class, then you need to be artificially promoted. Now, for example, someone of Jewish ethnicity, despite the fact that they are a particular ethnic group, are seen as part of the now oppressor class. So bad luck to them. Whereas someone who is, say, of Caribbean origin in the UK, they are seen as being part of the oppressed class. And it doesn't matter whether or not they went to Eton, they will still be artificially lifted up for that reason, for things that happened 200 years ago.
This is it. And if you were all in with the diversity project, then you'd be watching TV and you'd be looking at the top jobs, and you'd be like, where are the Eastern Europeans? Where are the British Chinese people? And etc. Of course, like everything woke, it doesn't stack up.
It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And it's pretty wild. Well, listen, I'm so excited because the switchboard is filling up, and I've got a simple question for you. Will Kingston has given us a killer line there. A lot of people are saying, OK, the licence fee is not for this world, fine. But Kingston's turned it up to 11. Do we shut down the BBC? That's next.
But you're right, it's got implications for the pound in people's pockets. And the market's reacted badly to all the speculation. First, income tax was going up, then it's not going up. And it looks as though now what the Chancellor, at the last minute, at the 11th hour, is scrambling to put together is a kind of smorgasbord of smaller tax rises. And so the end result of that is going to be, as I say, less money in your pocket and in my pocket, and it's going to hammer businesses. And we know that business confidence at the moment is absolutely on rock bottom.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is it time to shut down the BBC altogether? 6:53 Talk Breakfast. Peter's in Croydon. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well.
Morning,
We've
Peter.
got Will Kingston here, dropping some truth bombs and going where others won't. And Peter in Croydon. What's happening in Croydon this morning? Pitch black outside. Is it raining?
No, I don't think so. It's just miserable and no sign of Storm Alicia then.
No. We're still waiting for lovely Alicia to turn up.
Exactly. No, this is about talking about wastage of the BBC.
Yeah.
I was a driver for about five, 6 months for this journalist, and I was based at the New Broadcasting House.
Yeah.
And honestly, I could not believe the amount of people on computers, and there was about six to a desk. There must have been a good, I don't know, 500 on 4 floors.
Crazy.
So honestly, it was packed. So, and I used to be paid £100 a day, right? And on average, must have been about 2 jobs, about 2 hours. So I was basically paid £100 a day for working 2 hours, and we were called out to a report. And the journalist did his bit and all that. He edited it as well, but it was never aired. So it was a total waste of money, you know.
This is it. And isn't that what happens, Peter, when it's other people's money and when you don't have market forces and the business bottom line?
Sorry, what was that, Mark?
Yeah, Peter,
Sorry.
isn't that what happens in the public sector? You know, you see it in local authorities, you see it in any industry that doesn't have market forces, Peter.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Where there's pot of money, it's not their money. It's like the NHS.
Yeah.
It's not their money. It's our money, Mark, isn't it?
Well, it is. You can understand Peter's frustration about this, Will.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And just checking, Mark, do you have a private driver?
I do not.
Has Talk given you a private driver?
No, I have a moped, which I'll be honest with you, has seen better days. It's got a rusty exhaust. It gets me to work on time, but just about 1 minute to 6.
Yeah.
But this is it. You know, they live in a different universe to us, Will.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this is really interesting. Like, I know journalists at Talk, at other news organisations, where they'll have to get the bus to go out and find a story. They'll have to go out and, go get the tube or whatever. The fact that even this job exists is one example of how there is just wastage in these organisations. It's a really interesting insight that you've made because it affirms my suspicions that the amount of money that's just being thrown up against the wall is insane.
Well, it's interesting, Peter, because your observations are very, very sort of significant and rather, tell us about the culture of the university. Did you know, Peter, in the 80s, Mrs. Thatcher was interviewed on the BBC and 10 producers turned up. And at that point, she's like, right, I'm going to shake things up. And that's when she introduced legislation to make the BBC offer a competitive tender to make programmes for the corporation, which made it a lot more efficient. And it brought players in who had the expertise that the in-house didn't. That's the other problem, Peter, isn't it? Is if you do everything in-house, the quality is often not as good.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No.
isn't
No,
it?
it's
You know,
not.
for example, just as an example, you mentioned the NHS, but another thing that Thatcher did is she brought in compulsive competitive tendering in the NHS. So, for example, Peter, if you have a company that bids to clean a hospital, they'll come in with a much cheaper bid than the in-house team and offer higher standards, a better service.
Well, not necessarily, because I worked in the NHS, and I was employed by Serco.
Oh yes.
And the hospital, before hospital came in, they cut it. The NHS cut it. The porters.
Yeah.
They cut the service to make it more attractive. But then when Serco came in, they cut it even more.
So they actually made it. You were saying they made it worse.
Well, they did make it worse. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And then because I was temporary at the time, I was under a government scheme. But then, when they finally got their act together, I was employed. They employed me. So it's not necessary, yeah.
Are Serco the ones who are doing the asylum hotels as well, from memory?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're making millions, aren't they? And
No,
Peter,
absolutely.
what would you do with the BBC? What would you do with the licence fee? What would you do with the whole thing?
Well, I would defund the BBC and just put it on subscription.
Really?
They need to be taught a lesson, Mark. You know.
Yeah. And Peter,
Well said.
one thing I don't understand is why can't there just be a basic news service where you switch on the telly or the radio and they go, here are the headlines, here's what's happened in Britain, here's what's happened in America, and you just get information. Is that too much to ask? Do you think that would be possible, Peter, to have a service like that?
Well, you would like to think so, but yeah, I mean, in the real world, yeah, but and talking about this might be a precedent because I watch when I'm not watching talk.
Yeah.
I look at Sky for basically to see how unprofessional they are, and they are so unprofessional. Yeah. And I would like to think that Israel will sue Sky as well. So maybe Israel will follow. Because it's so biased, it's unreal.
Well, listen, Peter, you're so right, and thank you for a fantastic call to kick off the show. Peter, give me a call again soon. More power to you for the work that you do. You work hard at delivering value, unlike so many at the BBC. Lots more to come. Front pages next. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning. 3 minutes past 7. Better straighten my tie. We're on telly these days, aren't we? This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A big 3 hours coming up. Breaking this morning. Political insiders have told this programme Sir Keir Starmer will be gone in less than a year. So who replaces him? Andy Burnham? Wes Streeting? Well, the dark horse candidate, or ginger horse to be more accurate, Angela Rayner, is today reportedly on manoeuvres, sounding out support and offering cabinet jobs to people that can help her get into number 10. Meanwhile, given the chaos next door at number 11 and yet another U-turn over tax rises, should Sir Keir Starmer boldly sack Rachel Reeves before the budget on November 26th in order to save the economy and his job? We'll get reaction to these two developing stories, which are playing out as we speak. Meanwhile, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive at 8 a.m, the dangerous open borders extremism of the Green Party revealed. Two very special guests in a very, very important Dolan's dispatch. That is 8 a.m. in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. It might get me cancelled. Well, good. And a shocking new development in the diplomatic crisis engulfing our national state broadcaster. The front page of the Mail on Sunday this morning, White House fury at Trump monster jibe in showpiece BBC lecture. This is a fresh headache which is guaranteed to put a wedge between the leader of the free world and the BBC. But if Trump is successful, who pays the $5 billion bill? 0344 499 1000 is our phone number. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can send us a voice note as well. So much to get through. It's all about your opinions. As the saying goes, let's talk. And reacting to the big stories of the day, with me in the studio, top political commentator and broadcaster Will Kingston, and, let me tell you, down the line, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Good morning, Will Kingston, and good morning, Mike Neville.
Yes, good morning, Mark. So I can't be in the studio today.
Listen, it's great to have you. You're a busy man with demands on your time. And what about this for the big political story of the day? Mike, Rachel Reeves is clearly struggling as Chancellor. Keir Starmer struggling as Prime Minister. The Sunday Telegraph, Rayner plots move against Keir Starmer. Former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has been offering cabinet jobs to those that will get her into number 10. Do you see this happening?
Well, it's a shocking thing, isn't it? And people just remember that only a couple of months ago she was being sacked for not paying all.
Now, we've just lost the line to Mike in a second. Don't worry, he hasn't been cancelled. But this is the big headache for Starmer, is that there is someone. You always have a problem as Prime Minister or leader of a party, Will, if there is an heir apparent, if there's someone waiting in the wings. Yeah. And in the absence of Angela Rayner, I don't think that Starmer's got too much to worry about. But she is the itch that the party seem to want to scratch.
Yeah, that's right. I'll almost finish Mike's sentence for him, and that is...
Should we do a Trump edit on it?
That's right, yeah. It is shocking because she was only punted for a blatant breach of the guidelines. 2 months ago? 3 months ago? But everyone on the party base kind of went, we don't really want to get rid of her. She is actually my pick. I think she will be the Prime Minister in 12 months' time. I
agree with you. And of course, don't forget how woke and box-ticking Labour are. They cannot elect another white bloke to lead the party. Now, I couldn't care less about their gender or skin colour, but the Labour movement do.
And the fact of the matter is, it annoys them so much that they're apparently the party of DEI, of inclusion, and yet it's the Conservatives are the ones who have delivered female prime ministers, who have delivered prime ministers from minority groups, in inverted commas, whereas the Labor Party continues to be dominated by middle-aged white men. It just goes to show the shocking hypocrisy of not just Labor, but the whole woke thing more generally.
Most definitely. I do see Rayner, for better or worse, as Labour's Boris-type figure.
Yeah.
That she's colourful, she's fearless. Like you said earlier, she's got a great backstory. Although I will tell you that there are those on the left that think she's not really working class. She's got several homes. She lives a life of luxury, and that she's quite disconnected from the concerns of ordinary people. But the image, the optics of it is enough to get her across the line.
Yeah, and let's make this very clear to listeners and to viewers, and that is, we're not saying that we think that she is competent. We're not saying that we think she would be a good Prime Minister. I think we're on a unity ticket here that she is woefully incompetent. I don't think she has the intellect to be a great leader, for starters. But in an age where people demand authenticity for their leaders, which is why Starmer is so hated, because he's seen as such a robotic, nothingy figure.
Yeah.
She does have this whole I'm authentic, I'm working class type deal, which that part of the Labor movement really, really like.
Most definitely she'd be an antidote to Starmer, because the issue with him, he's not a very good politician. She's terrible at working out how to pay stamp duty and never knows where she lives, but she's a canny political operator. And even when she does something that on the face of it was a negative, such as calling Tories thum, all that does is drum up support from the Labour base.
That's exactly right.
You know, the people that were horrified about calling Tories scum, they're not her audience, and she doesn't care.
Yeah, and the people who are listening and who are watching, it will infuriate them hearing this sort of stuff. But unfortunately, she wants you to be infuriated. And this, again, is why it annoys me so much when you hear Labor politicians like Starmer and Sadiq Khan talk about unity, talk about trying to prevent people from dividing us. These are the people who divide us. When they say things like, we need to stop people who try and divide us, what they're really saying is, we want to shut up people who disagree with us.
Most definitely.
And she is a very good example of that.
Well, Mike Neville is back. We put 10p in the meter, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. And Mike, the issue you've got, be careful what you wish for, because Starmer is very unpopular. In fact, the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began in the late 70s. But his replacement will, by definition, Mike, be more left-wing, more woke, pro-open borders, pro-high taxes, big state and higher debt.
Absolutely, and I think the person who may well win it is Ed Miliband, the man famous for eating a bacon sandwich. That's what we might end up with. You know,
he's the current front runner, isn't he?
He is the front runner, and it's with his net zero lunacy. This is where the country could be when people put that cross in the box for the Labour Party. This is where we ended up. I mean, what I've found in life is that, and I come from a council house in Bolton, so my mother used to say, people in Bolton vote for a pig with a red ribbon on it. But what I've found in my life is that every generation has to have Labour. It's almost like they have to have a go, or we'll give them a try, and every time it's a disaster. But no one ever learns, and young people come forward who are sort of well-meaning and a bit naive, and they vote Labour, and we go through the entire political cycle, Labour, Tory, and something's got to break that, and hopefully the Reform Party will just give a change, because we're sick of this roundabout of politics where it's one in, one out, as Starmer would say, and it's the same old rubbish every time.
Do
you think, and I think Miliband is a really canny observation, because he is also very popular with the Labor base and may actually be more popular than Rayner is with the parliamentary Labor Party. Do you think if he was to be put in that position, it would give him licence to go even further on the insane net zero policies that he's already enacting in his current ministerial position?
I think so, because these net zero policies, they're not a policy. It's a cult. It's a religion. These people, they don't, it's not something where you think, what's the rational choices here? It is, I believe this with all my heart and all my soul, and I'm going to pursue it no matter how bad it gets. It is the right thing to do. It's almost like the early Christian martyrs standing there as the lions eat you. They will see the country dragged to its knees. We'll be sat watching by candlelight, in a tent, and then they'll still think we're doing the right thing because it is a religion.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Will and Mike, stay with us because I'm delighted to say we're joined now by Lenny in Ashford. Good morning, Lenny. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark.
Lovely to have you on board. What are your thoughts about this? We're going to get a new Prime Minister and all the country's problems are going to be fixed overnight, aren't they?
Well, I don't know who could fix them because every single minister in the Labour Party is stained or not doing a good job.
Point.
Well, you're right. They're all damaged goods, aren't they? We've had the net zero madness, Lenny, from Ed Miliband, which has pushed up energy prices and weakened our infrastructure. You've got Angela Rayner, who is provably corrupt and hasn't paid her stamp duty. Rachel from Accounts, who's destroyed the economy and keeps changing her mind about tax rises. I cannot think... I mean, the only thing I would say, Lenny, do you think maybe Wes Streeting is the one with the sort of personality and political chops to do a better job?
Well, personality is an asset, but, I mean, if you look at the rise he gave the doctors with no rules attached,
yes,
that is incompetence.
Well, can I also add, Lenny and Mark, he is going to lose his seat at the next election. That is, you can take that one to the bank. He only won very narrowly in the last election.
Yeah, they're around 1,000 majority.
And with the demographic shifts in his particular electorate, a Gaza independent will win that seat. So they're either going to have to come up with some excuse to move him, or they can't make him leader because he's not going to be there in 2029.
Mike, is Wes Streeting the best of a bad bunch?
Yes, he may well be, but the trouble with these people is that they're extremist in my view. They are very, very left wing. Anybody who thinks giving a 29% increase to the public sector without any categories of what you will do to improve this, and then wonders why the doctors are back on strike again, it shows he's got a complete lack of judgment. And they fall into this trap of thinking that the public sector is good and the private sector is bad. And what sums up all of them to me on the cabinet is there's not one of them who set up a business. And this is the massive problem that the country faces, that they do think that money is just generated. The people who generate it, those who employ one person, are the exploiter of the masses, or if you're a landlord, you're exploiting the masses. And this mindset runs through them all, including Streeting. And as I say, the naivety of giving that massive increase to doctors and then thinking that they won't think I'll come back for more because he's naive. It is the naivety of it all.
This is the critical point, and that is they keep saying, or at least they used to say, we're going for growth. But because they don't have that experience in business, they don't understand how to grow something. Like the for me, symbolic moment of this government, and there's been several terrible ones, was when they were talking about going for growth. And then you heard that Starmer had said that he'd gone out to each of the heads of the different regulators to get a hum up with ideas for how to grow the economy, when it is the regulators that are the ones that are stymieing growth. It is unbelievable how little these people understand about basic economics and how to actually turn this economy around.
Lenny, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think that Starmer will still be Prime Minister in a year's time?
Well, because there's no one there with any confidence that the country can have confidence in, I mean, can I just mention a few names? I mean, when you look at Rayner, she'll just it will be a return to the 60s when the unions devastated British industry, and there'll be no growth. You can't have growth in that situation.
Yep.
And if you look at Mahmood, she seems to be a front runner, but she's got a conflict of interest. And so you cannot have anybody, which I think was Starmer's main problem. He had a conflict of interest as a leader, and it's a complete failure. You can't have that.
Lenny, call me again soon. Really enjoyed your company this morning, and have an excellent Sunday. Next up, Donald Trump to sue the BBC for up to $5 billion. That number could increase, by the way, because that was before the Newsnight scandal. And the front page splash in the Mail on Sunday today, White House fury at Trump monster jibe in showpiece BBC lecture. So if Trump is successful and sues the BBC, should you and I pay the bill? That's next.
I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but actually the NHS is getting very good at dealing with strikes. This is the...
It's had to adapt, Roy, surely.
Yes, it has. And what they're doing now, previously what they did was they said, we will do nothing during the strikes. Everything gets parked for safety reasons and so on. The NHS now has a new chief executive, Sir Jim Mackey, who runs a very successful, or used to run a very successful trust up in Northumberland. He's taken an entirely different view. He says, we will continue business as usual.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:20 Talk Breakfast. Don't forget a very special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. in 40 minutes time, in which I expose the dark extremism of the Green Party. That's a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Don't miss it, with two special guests. But Andy in Southampton, is it just me, Mark, or would Angela Rayner representing us as our leader on the world stage be the most embarrassing, degrading appointment ever? Mark, says Joe. Mark and Will. Good morning, Mark and Will, says Joe.
Good morning.
If Rayner were to win a race to number 10, it would be the end for us as a country. We would be controlled by the hard left unions, which is an excellent point made by our earlier caller. And John in Portsmouth on the BBC. Mark, the BBC are happy enough to take money from me every month, but how do I go about getting a refund for years of broadcasting lies. Well, I'm glad you said that, John. And one particular issue I've got is during the pandemic, the BBC were very, very pro-lockdown, which I believe was the wrong policy, which has destroyed the economy. Are the BBC going to apologise for that? Because countries that did not have lockdowns, such as Sweden, and states in America like Florida and Texas did not have lockdowns, they had the same outcomes. We didn't need all that damage.
I believe that was a rhetorical question, but I'll answer it anyway.
Good.
No, they won't apologise.
No, and they really should. How about this from Tim in Suffolk? What fun I'm having this morning. You and Will have just described a carry-on film starring Arthur Scargill. Let's get on to the BBC now, because I've got Frank who has messaged the show. Good morning, Frank. He says, Mark, surely the BBC is so popular they could crowdfund to pay the Trump bill. What a brilliant, brilliant message. I say your messages crack me up all the time. With me in the studio, the brilliant broadcaster and political commentator, Will Kingston.
But the analogy there is, again, like we hear so many lefties saying, oh, we love our BBC. They won't put their hands into their own pocket and pull out some money to save it. Just like you never see any lefties taking refugees and put them in their own homes, do you?
You never do.
It's all the virtue signalling. They never actually follow through.
Glad you mentioned that, because that's a key feature of today's Dolan's Dispatch, is about the horrific double standards of the deputy leader of the Green Party. We'll come to that.
Yes.
It's quite an expose. So Will Kingston's with us in the studio. Down the line, retired Scotland Yard detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. And Mike, the BBC clearly facing more bad headlines today, notwithstanding the $5 billion lawsuit from Donald Trump. Mail on Sunday, Mike, White House fury at Trump monster jibe in showpiece BBC lecture. Our national state broadcaster has created a diplomatic incident and brought shame and embarrassment on the country.
It's truly shocking, isn't it, Mark? And one of the a French article summed it up to me, because, of course, when France was occupied by the Germans in World War II, the BBC was seen as the voice of freedom. You know, Charles de Gaulle would broadcast on that. The international reputation of the BBC was absolutely so high. And it's strange, like the French are saying, how could it fall so low? And
wow.
I agree with Will as well. You know, if you want the Guardian TV show, then pay for the Guardian TV show, because I don't want it and I don't want to pay for it. But too often these people, what they do is they expect the entire state to have a left-wing default position. So whether it's lockdowns or Trump or Brexit or whatever else it is, they expect to get for free this broadcasting service, where if you want a sort of right-leaning broadcaster, you're expected to run it as a commercial business, and if it doesn't work, you fail. And this is the wickedness of the establishment or the blob or whatever you want to call them. That's why they hate people like Trump, because if Trump was in charge of the country, the BBC would have been kicked into touch years ago.
And it's a simple point, but it's an important point that we need to make in this conversation, and that is, let's not forget that they have a regulatory duty to be impartial. And it's beyond a joke now. They have flouted that obligation to be impartial for years and years and years, Mark.
Oh, they most definitely have. And so here's a question for you, Mike and Will. Start with you, Mike. If Trump is successful in this legal action and he gets some compensation, I don't think it's going to be $5 billion, but it could run to several £million. Mike, who foots the bill?
Well, unfortunately, it'd be us, won't it? Because no matter how they take it off the BBC, that's our money that's being paid. So many people still pay the licence fee that whatever happens, we will end up paying it. I do agree with you. You know, they're suing America for these enormous sums. It'll come here and it'll be a lot less. But whatever it is, it's the British public that will pay out for their wickedness in doing these splicing videos together and whatever else they've done. And but the thing is, the United States is our greatest ally. We've fought hand in hand twice in world wars all over the world. Our armed forces have been with the United States Army and wherever else. And now we find ourselves in this diplomatic incident because a allegedly impartial broadcaster, which we all pay for, can't be impartial.
No, that's the issue. We were just saying, would the public pay for a service which was just a factual news feed without opinion and without activism, Mike? Is that even possible?
I don't think so. Why do we need to? The BBC is just out of date. We don't need a state broadcaster anymore. We've got enough companies. We've got enough. You won't have to go on the TV. When I was a kid, there 3 channels. And I remember there being a button on the TV which was a 4th one. I said to my grandparents, what's that for? Oh, there might be a 4th TV channel one day. And now you've got literally hundreds of channels.
Yeah.
Why do we need to have this state-funded broadcaster? We just don't need it at all.
Mark, it's a really interesting point. Basically, the way that journalism has traditionally been conceived is you have 2 limbs. You have news reporting, where your job is to be objective and report the facts, and opinion commentary, which is what we're doing at the moment. We openly say that we have an opinion on the news. We're very transparent about that. The problem is at places like the BBC, the news reporting and opinion commentary have just blended together to the point where it's now indistinguishable. And you have these young journalists who are meant to be news reporters, but really they go into it to be activists to try and push a particular agenda, which is why you would see at the BBC, I reckon 80 to 90%, let's say 90% would be pro-Palestine, for example, in the way they report the conflict in the Middle East.
Yes, well, listen, David is in Gloucestershire. And David, welcome to Talk Breakfast. How do you think the BBC should be funded?
Well, I've heard you say this morning that you should defund it, and I absolutely agree it should be, and it should be shut down ultimately. But if you did it overnight, it's going to cost an absolute fortune, which the country would have to pick up. It's undoable. We know that. So in the meantime, let's set it up that they should say, right, for the licence fee, all programming on all regions, if the ratings go up, they can have more money.
Wow.
If the ratings come down, the licence fee has to come down. I thought about this yesterday.
Will Kingston, market forces.
Accountability, who would have thought? I think it's a great idea, but I don't think necessarily that accountability is a big part of the BBC's institutional DNA. But I love the idea.
Do you watch the BBC, David?
I don't watch it a lot. I mean, my wife does, and I curse about the news because I say, "Why are you watching that rubbish?" But I mean, but I can see the idea for regional programmes. I mean, we're down here in Gloucestershire, and points west. We actually get some stories about Gloucester, and they've got a Gloucester reporter. And I do get that. I think that would be very much lost because, let's be honest, you're political, you talk the world news, but you wouldn't report about, the cafe in Gloucester that might get shut down tomorrow afternoon because of, So I can see that side of it.
Well, yeah, and also, David, this is one of the scandals of the BBC, David, because even though they've got a budget of £5.5 million a year, 3.5 of which comes from the taxpayer, they axed local radio, and this was something that was really valued by a lot of Brits. Getting the local news.
Well, we have still got a Radio Gloucester. I mean, I'm blind. One of my carers, when I get in his car, "Oh, you're listening to Radio Gloucester, are you?" And you hear a few local stories. Sometimes when I'm with him, "Oh, I hear a local story. Oh, that's interesting."
But they've cut a lot of they've cut some of them, and they've cut quite a lot of the output now, haven't they? And sometimes when you're listening to local radio and you've got bloody Five Live, I should say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do know sometimes, and also sometimes it covers too big an area. I mean, my grandmother, she passed away now, but she was in just the wrong part of Gloucester. She used to get her news from Birmingham, from whatever that one is. And it was like, and she said, "Well, it's just all Birmingham news. You get nothing about, and just about cover the outskirts of Birmingham, and that was it, and that was her regional news,
When this defund the BBC argument comes up, the argument that you would lose regional news, I think, is the strongest argument to maintain funding for the BBC. And you know what? If we got to a position where you had some funding set aside for regional broadcasting and then they stripped the funding out for woke dramas and from biased left-wing national news reporting, I'd be comfortable enough with that. But the fact of the matter is the regional news reporting gets a very small percentage of that total pie, and most of it goes towards the woke dramas and the left-wing national news.
David, you said your wife listens to the BBC. Has it ruined her brain?
Well, I'm slowly working on her. She's still convinced that Boris Johnson was a good prime minister.
Well, we'll have to put her right on that one. Well, David, listen, she's a woman of wise judgment because she chose you, and she gets to listen to your truth bombs on a daily basis. She's a lucky lady. David, call me again soon as well. Really enjoyed your call. Mike, going forward, what is the future for the BBC? The level of service, the scale, and how it's paid for. What do you think? What's your blueprint?
Well, I would slash the licensing fee, and I would look at what is their essential services. We don't need any more dramas made with people who've got Netflix and the like. They can make whatever they want.
Yeah.
I think the local issue is a very, very good point. For these small communities, the more funding needs to put into that. So I think people would be happy to pay if they did get a report on the Dog and Duck pub in Bolton's holding a party or whatever else. That's a good thing, and it's very hard really to put a political spin on the local petrol station closing or the local police station moving. So that's something that could be done, but I really don't think it's that essential. I think most people get their news from many other sources these days. It's just a part of history where when TV started, this was the model. Then we went on to those ridiculous TV licensing vans. Remember those with the aerial on top, allegedly driving around, saying they were going to check up on you, all this nonsense. So I just don't think it's essential. And if it died away, well, such is life. Life moves on, doesn't it? We've the railways have changed. Everything changes as we move along the way. So let's get rid of it. It's really turned into a national. It's not just costing us money these days. It's a national embarrassment.
Mike, we'll never get rid of you. My thanks to retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville and my very good friend, the brilliant broadcaster and political commentator Will Kingston. We'll keep it real and come and see us again soon.
Pleasure as always, Mark.
More bad headlines for the BBC. Somebody has just revealed, a BBC insider has revealed that the organisation is in the trans ideology groupthink, and it's a major headline and a big fresh headache for the organisation. I'll speak to one of the country's finest broadcasters on this next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:35. Can I thank our engineer? Engineer Dave is away today. He's having plastic surgery. I can give you the details. Botox and a bum lift. And I'm delighted to say that we've got the excellent James looking after the show today. So that's great. And we are very, very busy. A special Talk Breakfast exclusive coming up at 8 a.m. The dangerous open borders extremism of the Green Party revealed. You will not want to miss it. A special Dolan's dispatch at 8 a.m. But how do you solve a problem like the BBC? Well, a new bad headline in the papers today, in the Sunday papers, revealing that the BBC is in the full grip of trans ideology. This according to a Tavistock Centre whistleblower. Let's get reaction from the revered broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee. Good morning, Linda.
Morning, Mark.
Really good to see you. You are a veteran of broadcasting of many decades, and you've been a Sky News presenter. You're on lots of networks. Have you worked much for the BBC over the years?
I was on air for the BBC this year, but generally speaking, I have not worked for the BBC very much. Quite a lot early in my career, I trained as a journalist on what was called the Thompson Regional Newspaper Training Scheme, which incidentally trained former heads of BBC News, former BBC presenters and former BBC correspondents. And I did work for BBC Wales quite a bit when I was younger. But of course, I left the country to be a foreign correspondent for quite a long slab of time. So not very much lately, but of course, many of my compadres and colleagues work for the BBC currently and historically.
And do you feel, given your years of broadcasting experience, that the BBC has changed, or has it always had a left-wing bias?
I don't know whether it's had a left-wing bias. It's always had a very establishment bias, clearly. But I think I was on air on Friday night, and someone had reminded me before I went into the studio. I phoned someone, and he was a colleague of mine on the training course that I did. He went on to become a very senior and well thought of BBC correspondent, and he reminded me that actually Tim Davie did not have a background as a journalist, despite telling us that he was crusading for, and we should crusade for, the right type of journalism. Actually, Tim Davie moved across from PepsiCo, and before that, Procter & Gamble. So I don't know that he has a very strong background as a journalist, or any background as a journalist, in order to be making comments about the right type of journalism. As I told our audience on Friday night, and our viewers, there's only one type of journalism, and that's fair and accurate journalism.
Most definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Linda, because Michael Gove went viral on X this week, suggesting that Piers Morgan should become the Director General of the BBC, given his journalistic experience. Of course, there are other potential candidates of that ilk, Andrew Neil, who I've got a very high regard for, or even potentially Michael Gove himself, who has political experience and is a former and current journalist.
Also, I think there were a couple of other people. When I was at ITV's Tonight programme, there was our deputy editor, Peter Barron, who went on to become editor of Newsnight, who is now head of comms for Google across Europe and Africa. I think he would be a good choice. He's actually ruled himself out, to me anyway. James Goldston, who was editor of the Tonight programme and who went on to be president of ABC News. I think he would be a good correspondent. But on the whole, I think someone who needs to be Director General of the BBC probably does need commercial experience as well as journalistic experience, because we're homing in on BBC News here, but actually it's the whole of the BBC that the Director General has to deal with. And I think going forward, particularly over charter renewal, the BBC will need someone that brings it into the modern era in terms of it being a profit-making exercise. Parts of the BBC are commercial now. I think BBC Studios is commercial, and it has commercial sections to it.
Yes.
There would be nothing wrong with expanding that part of the BBC and dealing with BBC News and how people pay for that. Historically, remember that people don't like paying for news. News doesn't make money. Sky News has been an incredibly successful organisation since it launched, where I was one of the anchors on air on launch night. It's been incredibly successful, but the news channel has never made money, as far as I'm aware.
There's a surprise. Now, developing story this morning, Linda, the BBC has been captured by activists who peddle trans propaganda, according to the woman who blew the whistle on the Tavistock clinic. This, of course, is the NHS clinic that was transitioning children and young people and which has since been shut down. Sue Evans helped expose the medical centre's use of puberty blockers on child patients, which eventually saw the closure of that outlet. She says that BBC have been infiltrated by activists and was biased in its coverage of the Tavistock saga and would allow misinformation to dominate discussions by letting statements go unchallenged. Now, this is a problem, isn't it? Because what happened in the Tavistock Centre looks to be a national scandal, one potentially aided and abetted by our national state broadcaster.
Yeah, I think that it's more than an implication. It's actually made in the Michael Prescott report, which is what actually stirred all of this up.
Yeah.
And I think there are elements of that at the BBC. It wasn't the biggest criticism in the Prescott report, but that does seem to have been amplified by what she has been saying. I said last week, I think, on air, that it's not so much thinking of the BBC as a right-wing or a left-wing organisation. It's about thinking about it as an elitist organisation.
Wow, yeah.
And I think that is certainly true. I think there's a level of groupthink that goes on there, which means that they chatter amongst themselves without actually paying attention to what the great majority of people, i.e. their viewers, are talking and thinking about at home, and that's the problem.
Well, if you watched a lot of the BBC's output, particularly news and current affairs, Linda, you wouldn't know you were living in a country where a third of voters are planning to elect Nigel Farage at the next election.
No, that's true. And what's interesting is Nigel Farage and his team pulled out of doing a TV programme. And they did that because of what has happened. Because I think, just to retrack a little bit, what Tim Davie did when he made his kind of apology stroke crusading speech was he ignored the fact that people are very, very annoyed about this. And he ignored the central nugget of what has gone on here, and that is the actual editing situation. Now, if people don't trust that, and that's the worst kind of edit that actually can happen, is when you use the splicing editing process to prove a point that you can't prove by using a clip, an uninterrupted clip of the footage, then you're in serious trouble. I think that for me, was the biggest problem, and that's why people feel that they can't now trust the BBC. There's an awful lot of anger about this now that the BBC hasn't addressed, and Tim Davie certainly didn't address when he left the BBC, and that has made matters a great deal worse.
Well, it's amazing because, you know, I got to know you on various sort of opinion-led media formats, and yet you're so irredeemably balanced, Linda, that I still can't really put my finger on your politics, and I think that's the way it should be, if only. And Claire says, hi Mark, the BBC needs to concentrate on UK local comedy, documentaries, drama and the radio stations. That's it. BBC channels in other countries need to be disbanded. And Linda, let's take a listen to a couple of voice notes. This is Pete regarding the BBC. Take it away, Pete.
Don't know about the BBC having liability insurance, but they certainly are a liability to this country and the voters, aren't they? Because unless Trump sues them or something drastic happens, the BBC will just continue on their merry way, doctoring videos up and leaning to the left and being the anti-Semitic company that they always have been. No more of this TV licence, which is, in my opinion, a legalised extortion.
Pete, what a brilliant bit of language there. Thank you for that voice note. This is Nick in Loughborough.
Will Kingston makes a very good point when he says that we don't need a state broadcaster. Well, we, as the people, don't need a state broadcaster in this day and age. The only thing that needs a state broadcaster is the state, because it needs its own propaganda arm in this world where states and the establishment are becoming more and more globalist. They need a propaganda arm to push their tripe in terms of strife. Have a good day.
There you go,
Mark.
Nick, not sitting on the fence. Thank you so much for that, Nick, as well. Keep those voice notes coming and the calls 03444991000. Linda, the public are angry and many have had enough.
They are really, really angry. And in my view, the one thing they have every right, amongst others, every right to be angry about is this license fee situation. I mean, that has been a point of contention for as long as I've been in television. When the BBC was first set up, and it was, or we had, I think one of your other viewers was talking about the 3 buttons on the TV set and the 4th one, he didn't know what that was for. You had this era where you paid the license for BBC output, but that changed very dramatically. You got ITV, you got Channel 4, you've got other stations, then you got streaming, you've got a multi-channel platform. You know, I cannot understand why anyone thinks it's morally right to have a license fee for the BBC. I mean, I've mentioned this before, but I remember going to a big event, a very famous big event in London, where I was talking to an extremely senior BBC news figure. And at the time, ITV was having problems, you know, just with the balance sheet. There just wasn't enough money. And he said, well, at least, Linda, that's something we don't have to bother about at the BBC because we've got the license fee. Now, it's that level of insensitivity, which I think it was. I think it was insensitive to say that actually baffles people about the licence fee. And we're coming up to charter renewal now, which may be one of the reasons why Tim Davie and Deborah Turness resigned when they did, because you've got to find another DG to get his feet under the table, or her feet under the table, in order to negotiate that. And although I think many people are speaking emotionally and out of anger this morning, there are good reasons why we should have the BBC. I mean, I'm sure that those people who said that they would disband the BBC are some of the people who watch Traitors, for example. I mean, there were 12 million of them, let's face it. So we have to pay attention to that kind of thing. I agree with you, Mark, that one of the travesties was the kind of demolition of the local radio scene. I used to find BBC local radio so invaluable. Yeah. But there are many things BBC News does. I don't agree that we should abandon BBC Foreign, although BBC Arabic was criticised in the Prescott report. But I think the great occasions of state, for example, nobody in the world does those better than the BBC. The BBC have the experience, the background, they have the knowledge, they have the playbook for each and every big event, big funeral, royal funerals that we anticipate. They have anticipated them for many years. These events are incredibly important to our national heritage and very expensive to do. I don't think that they should be covered by a commercial broadcaster.
Linda Jubilee is a leading journalist and communications advisor. Linda, great to see you again. Look forward to our next on-air encounter. Does Britain need a national state broadcaster? That's next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Does Britain need a national state broadcaster? We're going to continue that conversation, and in just 10 minutes' time, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, I'll be exposing the dark extremism of the Green Party in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. But now I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Talk's royal correspondent for all the big royal stories of the day. It is Rupert Bell. Good morning, Rupert.
Good morning, Mark.
Listen, what are the important headlines in the royal circles today? Is Prince Andrew, or now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, proving to continue to be a headache for the King?
That headache isn't going away. Of course, the King was celebrating his birthday this week, but he can't get away from the sort of gnawing, sort of drip feed of sort of allegations surrounding Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor.
Yes.
So that's the problem for him. And there are more people coming forward saying they met them, and Epstein emails, and Andrew may be trying to say, could I get some help here because it's causing me problems? And these seem to be the kind of thing coming forward, and latest allegations of a lady coming forward that, with her links to Epstein, although she said she never formally met Andrew, she did meet Sarah Ferguson. So it's all a murky sort of area. And of course, by the end of this week, Andrew has to confirm, because he's set the deadline of November the 20th, the demands of the House of Congress to say, can you come forward and respond to allegations against you? So there is still a few worrying days ahead for the King as what Andrew will do. I don't know whether he will come forward and reply to them, but it just once again shows the murky waters that continue to surround Andrew, and it doesn't look like it's being cleared up anytime soon. And Sarah Ferguson, will she, won't she? Is she going to live in Portugal with her daughter? And all sorts of things going on.
Yeah.
But for the royal family, it's just a mess.
It most definitely is. Epstein tried to lure me to dinner with Andrew, victim claims. These are unwelcome headlines, and they're coming thick and fast, Rupert.
Yes, and this lady coming forward saying, in many ways, because by all accounts she looked a bit like Princess Diana. I mean, it's all pretty creepy stuff, it has to be said, when you read the actual article, if these allegations are true. So, it just makes for uncomfortable reading if the King is reading his Sunday papers with his boiled egg as we speak, or whatever his chosen choice is for breakfast.
Yes.
He'll be irritated that Andrews won't go away, despite the fact they've tried to push him into the background, stripping him of his titles, and now by all accounts even clubs in London are saying, no, we don't want to see you anymore. So, I mean, it's all just all these allegations, and it's not going to get worse. I mean, because clearly there's a bit of if you look at what's going on in the States, there's a bit of a feeding frenzy for all these files to be released, although President Trump is against it. But when you see people from the Republican Party and elements who are pro-Trump saying, come on, we need all these files released, it shows that it's not going away, because if eventually they do release them, or maybe there will be even more allegations against Andrew that will come out.
Rupert, can we offer a note of empathy in the direction of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor in regard to the Epstein relationship, given the fact that there are so many other celebrities and politicians linked to the disgraced late billionaire, that is there a sense that Andrew's a bit of a fall guy, given that so many others are implicated?
I think there is definitely an element, because it's almost easy. So the others are sort of probably potential, because he is the main focus, particularly in this country. But there are allegations against some serious high-profile individuals in the States, but it doesn't seem to be causing as many problems for those individuals that Andrew has. But it's because Andrew has had an out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre, who, of course, committed suicide earlier this year. He strenuously denied all the allegations, so he doesn't make it easy on himself when there are all these sort of things coming out, even, confirming that the picture took place, which, of course, Andrew denied. He said it was Photoshopped. So there's all these things. So he is potentially the low-hanging fruit and an easy one to sort of endlessly have a go at. But in America, as I say, that's why if these files come out, in all those files, then there may be other people who will have to answer allegations as well. I don't know the full terms of that, but for Andrew, he does seem to be the fall guy, but he's probably brought it on himself.
Rupert, Andrew is no longer HRH, no longer Prince Andrew, no longer Duke of Sussex, no longer a member of the Order of the Garter. Are there any other levers that King Charles can pull at this stage?
I'm not sure at this stage. He's now a private citizen, and that's why he's trying to. It's your ship now. You sail in it.
Yeah.
You haven't got us backing you, and that is the issue. That's what the royal family have tried to do: distance himself by taking away his titles and saying he's now a private citizen. This is his issue. Yes, he may end up living in Sandringham or wherever. We don't know. Maybe he'll run away to Abu Dhabi potentially, or something. We just don't know. But for the royal family, it just, unfortunately, by association, even though they want to wash their hands of him, by association, that is the problem for him. And the more come out, it's sort of, there's a feeding frenzy, with this whole saga. And that is the problem for the royal family, even though now he is stripped of everything. But the only person who can deal with it ultimately is Andrew, and the consensus is that he's not going to come forward anytime soon and suddenly change his tune. As I say, he strenuously denies these allegations.
Rupert, briefly before you let you go, another horrible week for the Sussexes, given the fact that just a week ago to the day, King Charles, Queen Camilla, William and Catherine were laying wreaths at the cenotaph. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan are partying at Jeff Bezos's $165 million mansion at the Kardashians' 70th birthday celebrations of Kris Jenner. Meghan doesn't wear a poppy. Not a good look.
Well, no, more importantly, it seems to be who agreed to these photographs pulled off. There's all the shenanigans about the photographs. By all accounts, there was, did you want your photograph taken? But the Kardashians have said anyone who came here will have their photograph taken. Even this appearance at Kardashians turned out to be a mess. Now it turns out his trip to Canada, did he really let the royal family know that he was going there? It appears people in the royal family are saying no, using sources. So again, they've just had another bad PR week, and think going to the Kardashians, whatever you like, should be, it's a bit of a showbiz fest. You thought you might be quite happy, but
Rupert, you always put a smile on my face. We'll catch up soon. Dolan's Dispatch next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
(8:02). Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A big 2 hours to come. Breaking this morning, political insiders have told this programme Sir Keir Starmer will be gone in less than a year. So who replaces him? Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, well, the dark horse candidate, or ginger candidate to be precise, Angela Rayner is today reportedly on manoeuvres, sounding out support and offering cabinet jobs to people that can help her into number 10. Meanwhile, given the chaos next door at number 11 and yet another U-turn over tax rises, should Sir Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves before the budget in order to save the economy and his job? Meanwhile, Donald Trump, the president, the leader of the free world, is planning to sue the BBC for upwards of $5 billion. If he's successful, should you and I foot the bill? And here's a question for you at 8:03 on a Sunday morning. Does Britain still need a national state broadcaster? Now, my priority for the next 2 hours is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Book your place on the show. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Who should pay the Trump BBC bill? Let me know your thoughts on that. And what would Britain look like under the stewardship of Prime Minister Angela Rayner? This is not a drill. The Ginger Growler is planning the mother of all comebacks. I'm growling in your company. We've got a very big 2 hours. As the saying goes, let's talk. And as always, at this time in Talk Breakfast, it is time for Dolan's Dispatch. You might think of the Greens as a friendly, cosy political party obsessed with compost and recycling and spending most of their time on all fours in the allotment. Don't be fooled. This movement, which is largely made up of middle-class do-gooders, is in fact very radical and I would argue dangerous, as it advocates regressive trans ideology, despite the verdict of the Supreme Court in regard to the legal primacy of biological sex. It seeks a vast redistribution of wealth that would have even Karl Marx blushing, and, which perhaps most worryingly, appears to favour an effective open borders policy, as confirmed by this chilling video from the rather posh deputy leader of the party, Rachel Millward. Of course, she's called Rachel, obviously. Take a listen.
Fundamentally, I do not think we should be housing asylum seekers in camps. And people say, well, what should we be doing? And I'm like, well, asylum seekers should have the right to work. And that would mean that people could come and they could integrate into our society. They could bring skills that we need, actually. These, there are doctors and surgeons and, barbers and all sorts of different people. And they could come and bring those skills and integrate into our society and then pay their way and have that dignity. And that would be better for their well-being and better for our communities. Having hundreds of people on one site who've all been through serious trauma recently is clearly a high-risk situation in various different ways. It would be much better if they were more integrated. So that's not a NIMBY position, is it? That's a please let's welcome people properly position.
Well, there you go. She's absolutely right, isn't she? They're all doctors and surgeons. They're all barbers. And a few Welsh choir boys thrown in for good measure. The ignorance on display here is absolutely shocking. And it's chilling, given the fact that the Green Party are winning power at a local level and could win a significant share of the popular vote at the next general election, given the disillusionment of left-wing voters with Labour. This is truly shocking, and that's why we've got to talk about this. So Rachel's message is a clear one. Refugees are welcome, except they're not very welcome in the leafy East Sussex suburb where Rachel Millward lives. In her shared Green Party role as deputy leader of Shane McGowan tribute act Zach Polanski's leadership, Millward proudly declared that she would hang the flags of all nations to celebrate asylum seekers, but has since objected to 600 of those engineers, surgeons and choir boys being accommodated at a local army camp. Isn't it ironic that Rachel is all for open borders except when it affects her neighbourhood, where she has a house worth a reported £1.6 million, which allegedly boasts a snooker room and swimming pool? Well, maybe posh Rachel could take in a few of these doctors and engineers herself. I'm sure they'd love snooker, and we all know they're strong swimmers. Meanwhile, Rachel Millward's dangerously naive worldview, where all are welcome, fell apart this week when she was confronted by concerned residents who don't share her suicidal empathy, which would see people whose backgrounds we know nothing about and who have entered the country illegally being shown the red carpet. Here is Andrew Wilson pointing out that he's not alone in rejecting this pathological madness.
This town has been reported in the press as being divided. Can we just have a show of hands and some noise in this room to prove that we are not divided about this issue? Just today, there was 3 people in Lewis Crown Court, all of whom were part of your asylum programme, and they brutally raped a woman on Brighton Beach on October the 4th. I do not want that in Crowborough, and I want your assurance that you'll take personal responsibility for anything that happens in this town as a result of what you're doing.
Now, that was the heroic and brave Andrew Wilson, outnumbered by locals with common sense. Finally, this is Kim from Crowborough Shield, a non-political residents group working to challenge and overturn the decision to house 600 asylum seekers at Crowborough camp. Kim confronts our Rachel directly, and it is a thing of beauty.
You did a video the other day, Rachel, saying that all of these people, you know, doctors and engineers and surgeons that are coming here, and we should give them the right to work. Now, firstly, engineers, doctors and surgeons do not come from France on a dinghy and throw their medical certificate overboard.
Brilliant stuff. Sorry, folks. They are far more dangerous and radical than they let on. More communist than compost. You'd have to be green at the next election to vote for the Green Party. Well, I'm delighted to say that those voices you just heard, Kim Bailey and Andrew Wilson, who have gone viral since then, join me exclusively on Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Mark.
Good to have you both on the show. Kim, did you expect your comments, your remarks at this meeting to go so viral and make such a splash?
No, I expected our community to be kind of up in arms and in agreement, but I didn't expect it to go the way it did on social media and broader.
And what motivated you to say what you did? What did you think when you watched that video of Rachel Millward saying, you know, that the people entering the country illegally are doctors, engineers and barbers and surgeons and all the rest of it?
I think it's quite shocking, and it just shows a lack of understanding of the small boat crisis and who these people are that are coming. I also feel that it undermines and disrespects the doctors that we do have working here from overseas. You know, they've come here and set up practice, and they're fantastic. It's not the same thing. And like I said to Rachel, these people don't come over on the dinghies from France. They don't throw their medical registrations overboard. And in fact, Afghan medical certificate licenses, they're not licensed to practice here. It's not recognised. So they would have to go through medical training anyway. So it's a point. I don't understand where she's getting her information from.
Well, no, I mean, it's naivety, isn't it, Kim? And it's ignorance. But also, I'd argue it's misinformation. It's it's dishonest. It's a lie, isn't it, to just characterise the people entering the country illegally as doctors and surgeons and engineers?
Yeah, I mean, if we go by any the atrocities that we see on the TV, it's not that at all, is it? It's deluded, and I think Rachel really is not fit for purpose. I don't think she represents the people that vote Green. She doesn't represent our residents. I don't think she really knows what she's doing. I think she's sat as a councillor for quite some time, dealing with non-impactful issues.
Yeah.
And now it's come to something where she needs to step up and provide leadership. She's not capable, and I think she needs to do the right thing and step aside and let someone else take lead. Same as James, Councillor Partridge.
Well, indeed. Now, Andrew Wilson, you spoke with great authority at that same meeting, and your key message was that actually our society is not divided on this issue and your community is not divided on this issue. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, as soon as the news broke about Crowborough, there were a couple of town meetings called by residents. I went to those meetings, and post those meetings, a national broadcaster, and not yourselves, obviously, it's a 3-letter broadcaster that's currently going through some trouble with Donald Trump,
right.
Published articles telling everyone that Crowborough was divided. And quite frankly, that is absolute nonsense. Crowborough is not divided. We are a very friendly, welcoming town. We have actually got a history of welcoming legitimate refugees into this town. But what we've seen here is a Home Office Whitehall decision driven by a government that has lost control of the asylum crisis, small boat crisis, and they are seeking to put 600 of those people in Crowborough and allow them, to wander around the town. And that is a scary and terrifying thought for every mother, daughter, wife, husband, son in this town.
And Andrew, we have the anecdotes and we have the stories and the absolute horror stories about the things that can happen when undocumented folk roam freely on the streets, and it has happened in East Sussex very egregiously in recent times.
Well, I'm not suggesting that every single one of the people that comes over on the small boats is inherently a criminal, but the fact is we don't know. And the way that the Home Office is proposing to run the Crowborough camp is that they are going to have up to 600 people. I think the number that they're now quoting is 540 people, but on a 3-month cycle. So you're looking at over 2,200 individuals over the 12-month period that they say they're going to use the camp. Now, I don't believe them, by the way. I believe they are intending to use this for a lot longer than 12 months. But that's perhaps just me being cynical about everything this government seems to be doing. And we've seen very, very little in the way of challenge from the local council, of which I am a member, by the way. I'm an independent councillor on Wealdon District Council, and I have been subjected firsthand, as have we all, to a window into what Green government might look like. And to say it's not pretty would probably be the understatement of 2025.
Well, indeed, because Kim, actually, you have the same position on this, the use of this army training camp for migrants as the Green Party, and Rachel Millward, she's against using this facility too. But her solution is very different to yours and very different to the wishes of many of the people that live in your area.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel's ideas, I think, are slightly different to mine. I mean, the site itself is not suitable. It's riddled with asbestos. I mean, we've sent you some photos of crumbling asbestos in the ceilings. You got the sewage system, it overflows in the rain. It's not suitable at all to house anybody there. So this is, this isn't just about, Crowborough doesn't want 600 men. I mean, 600 men in one area with very little recreational activities. There's nothing to do in our town. It's schools and churches. That's pretty much it. The whole thing is wholly unsuitable. It's quite, it's just on the edge of the town, but it's also in the forest. So there are strict planning rules around the development, and we have something called the SANGs and the SAMs, which is a monetary contribution when development or planning permission is granted in that kind of area. what they've actually said is any further development, loads of planning applications have actually been rejected based on the fact that the SAMS and the SANGS contributions will not offset the negative impact on the forest. And so all of these applications are being kind of denied because the increase in population is too detrimental to the forest. So I don't understand how they can now say that actually putting 600 people there is okay when, you know, you've got I think it's the night jay, the African night jay, which obviously nest in the ground. They're a protected species. I believe they're protected internationally, and they will be ruined by, you know, their habitat. Things like that. Nothing has been consulted with us at all. There's been no consultations whatsoever. So it's not just about one thing here. This is about the Home Office bypassing every rule, every legislation, just to ram raid through this project that they've got that is going to be so detrimental to so many people, to the wildlife. It's just wholly wrong.
And the issue, Kim, is that the Green Party's solution and Rachel Millward's rather sort of, you know, luxury opinions on this, luxury beliefs, are that what we should do is have clear, legal, safe routes, let people that have entered the country illegally to work and immediately integrate in our society, which is, I'm assuming, reading between the lines, not really a solution in your view, given your remarks to Millward at this meeting.
I do believe that we should be providing safe routes for asylum seekers, and I think you'll find that the majority of the population actually agree with that. I think what she's proposing is not, it's not real. I think it's fantasy land. But yeah, we do definitely need to be helping us. I mean, we've already housed, I think, 250 Afghan families. So it's not that we don't want to support these people. We absolutely need to.
What do you think would happen regarding illegal immigration if the Greens were in power nationally?
I think if we base it off of Rachel Millward, it would be an absolute disaster for everybody.
What would it look like, do you think? And what's your concern?
Well, it's, you know, it's uncontrolled at the moment, isn't it? It's and the atrocities that you're seeing across the TV, that's going to increase. We have to know who these people are. We don't know anything about these people that come over because they do throw away their papers. We have no idea. We need to know who these peoples are because they, you know, some of them are dangerous. We've seen that on the news.
Most definitely. And the public, Andrew, are angry and they're scared.
I think they're angry at being ignored. They're angry at, as Kim's just said, not being consulted. You know, government, one of the first roles of government at every level is to keep the population safe. I don't see how this decision can in any way be described as keeping certainly Crowborough and by extension the wider Sussex population safe. And so it is the wrong choice. It was rejected by a previous government as being wholly unsuitable. In fact, the government's even seeking to close asylum hotels in remote, infrastructurally challenged areas. So, you know, to put them, as Kim said, into an army camp which is remote and infrastructurally challenged and on the edge of a town with very little for those people to do. I mean, you do need a car or some form of transport to get round up here. It is a remote area on the edge of the Ashdown Forest, which is one of the largest open areas in the whole of southern England. So it doesn't seem like the most appropriate place to put people. And I might submit also that given that this is an open camp, the risk of absconding and being unable to find these people is probably higher. The CCT coverage is not there. You know, it's getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon now. There are children that use the bus stop outside that camp. It's just in every conceivable way, you could not think of a worse place to put 600 undocumented people.
Well, no, and the issue is, Andrew, that, and I've said this for a while now, that accommodating people in hotels is expensive, really bad for the local community. It's incredibly unpopular and rightly so. But actually, it's a slight red herring. These folk have to go somewhere, and if they're in a training camp or ex-prison or wherever it is that they go, they still have pocket money, they still get a mobile phone, 3 meals a day, and the freedom to roam in that environment. And that's a big problem ongoing. So the wider national conversation sparked by your 2 viral videos, Andrew, is that we have to look at those crossings in the first place, look at the source of the problem, because in the end, there is no satisfactory place for people to live if they've entered the country illegally and about whose background we know nothing.
I would 100% agree with you, Mark. the hotels and this Crowborough situation are a symptom of the problem that we've had in this country now for a number of years. And the bureaucrats at the Home Office, and quite frankly, the ministers, the successive ministers, and this latest minister stood up in Parliament and said that the use of Crowborough Camp is not actually about reducing the amount of money that is spent on hotels. In fact, he said that the cost is broadly comparable to the use of hotels, and that his primary motivation for using this was to try and make it a little bit uncomfortable. But to put this into perspective, as I said, we're talking about over the course of 12 months, roughly 2,000 people going through this camp on a 3-month cycle, and that doesn't even touch the sides. I mean, that's probably 2 or 3 weeks worth of small boat crossings. The Home Office historically has come up with some absolutely harebrained potential ideas to stop the small boats. In fact, I think back in 2018, there was even mooted that they might decide to put a wave machine in the English Channel to try and make waves to push them back. I mean, if that is not nuts, I don't know what is. And there has to be a reasonable diplomatic solution, and the government needs to get its act together, because if it doesn't, we are in for a really, really rough time over the next few years.
Well, I think that's right. I think that your community is a portent for the future and just an example of the public anger about what's happening and how devastating it is when large numbers of undocumented, normally men, are accommodated within a community. It's basically an impact on the economy, it divides society, and it is an issue for safety as well. Listen, before I let you go, Paul in Hartlepool says, Mark, please, please, please thank Kim and Andrew for speaking out so loudly and eloquently on such an important matter. My wife and myself feel overwhelmed by illegal migrants in Hartlepool, and local councillors never speak up for us. Thank you for that, Paul. And that's the big thing, isn't it, Kim, is that the public do not feel heard.
No, I mean, we weren't consulted at all, and Rachel sadly lied to 600 residents over 2 meetings, saying that as soon as they were consulted by the Home Office in confidence, which, only 1 meeting was in confidence, the rest of the meetings they were encouraged to engage with stakeholders. But actually what she told the residents was, we challenged them straight away, and actually it was several weeks later, and it was we welcome working with you, and it was a complete lie. So you've got to be able to trust your councillors. There's got to be trust there.
Most definitely. And so look, you've sent me some photos. We'll post those online with the clip a little bit later, Kim. But it's been brilliant to have you on the show. My thanks to Kim Bailey, who is a part of the Crowborough Shield campaign to make sure that 600 people are not accommodated at a local training camp, and also to Andrew Wilson as well. Folks, it's been great to talk, a real privilege to have you on the programme, and I wish you well in your battle against this solution, which has been foisted upon you by the Home Office and has happened in too many of our towns and cities. But ultimately, I think the headline is the problem has got to be stopped at source. I don't care who does it. Enough is enough. This is Talk Breakfast. Next up, if Donald Trump wins his legal battle against the BBC, should you and I foot the bill?
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out. Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes. I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If Donald Trump is successful in his legal action against the BBC, should you and I foot the bill? Let's ask Peter Barnes, political strategist, and Labour councillor Sebastian Salek. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
What do you think, Sebastian? If Trump exacts a few million out of the BBC, I don't think it'll be 5 billion, but it could be 50 or 60 million pounds. Who pays?
Well, it's going to have to be the British public, isn't it? That's the only way out of this. But we're jumping ahead quite a lot here. Is he really going to do it? Yeah. Is he going to do it? This is a man who loves showmanship. He's come out of reality television. He loves a deadline. He loves a large amount of money. It's every component of a game show in one. I think he's just trying to create a bit of drama here. I don't think this will end up happening.
He has squeezed a few $1 million out of 2 US networks.
Yeah, that's the point.
Peter.
He did it to CBS, where they did the exact same thing over a Kamala Harris interview. It's pretty much carbon copy, which is quite interesting given the connection between CBS and the BBC and their connection across the pond. But for me, if I was Donald Trump, what I would actually do is let it kind of say, I accept your apology, but remember, you exist now because I let you exist. That is actual power. That is actual kind of soft power that Donald Trump can wield out every single time somebody has a go at him, saying, you think I'm the bad guy, I let you exist. That is real power. It's not just financial motivation, because that's not really Trump's thing. Trump is now going after these institutions who have lied about him, because that is what the BBC did. It's not a mistake. It's not an editorial error. It was a lie. It was deliberate. It's deliberate.
Why?
Without a doubt, because when you look at it, they spliced two bits together, then covered over it.
But what's the motive?
But the motive is because they all come from the same tract, that Donald Trump is the bad guy. He's the big bad boss in every kind of Marvel movie.
But hang on, just put yourself in the position of a producer at the BBC. Yeah. If you do something that is outright lying and just assume it is malicious for a moment, why would you do that?
Because they don't see it as lying. They see it as their moral imperative to do it.
Because they're not journalists, they're activists. And what they've sought to do with that clip is to frame Donald Trump as being responsible for what happened on January the 6th. Now, there may be evidence that Trump spoke in a manner that incited the violence, but not at that moment. So what they've done is lost the moral high ground with a fake edit. And that's the reason. So what motivates them? They're activists, they've got Trump derangement syndrome, and they want to lie about what he said in that speech.
I don't think it's fair to say the BBC are activists.
Yes, well, whoever edited that script doesn't like Donald Trump, do they?
Well, look, I've been a television producer, so I can see this, and I can see how flippant it was, and I don't think it was malicious.
The thing is, it's not just one person. It is a series of people that have had to look at this before it's even gone out for output. So this is the point. It's not just one editor, like a rogue individual. This is an entire orchard of people who have looked at it, and it's not just one bad apple.
Trump's been stitched up, hasn't he, with this clip?
I don't know that he's been stitched up. I think it was wrong. Let's be really clear about that.
That would be like if I recorded you saying I don't beat my wife, okay, and I removed the don't bits.
Oh, completely agree.
Okay, suddenly you do beat your wife. Well, that's what they did to Trump.
Yeah, that's right. But what I'm saying is I don't think this was a hit job. I don't think it was a malicious attack. I've been a producer. I know how easy it is. You're falling into that consensus,
or the pro-beat consensus, which is that it was a mistake.
I do think it was a mistake, because, and as we've established, we
talked
about this,
a lot of people made a big mistake.
Good incentive to do
But it's a curious mistake. It's funny that the mistake makes Donald Trump look bad. It wasn't a mistake that made him look good, was it?
Well, think about it like this. We haven't considered the timing. This was broadcast a few days before the last US election. This attack on the Capitol had already happened. People are on the record saying Donald Trump
I know this argument
is the reason that I stormed the Capitol. What would be your incentive to do it then? Why wouldn't you do it earlier?
So this is the problem, is we've kind of conflated two arguments. One is the actions of the BBC, and one is whether Donald Trump can and should sue. So I don't think he would actually win the case under Florida law, because of the argument you made is come out after the incident and all the rest of it. It doesn't negate the fact that the BBC put out content that they had deliberately manipulated.
This is the issue. I don't think it's deliberate, and I haven't heard anything today that's convinced me otherwise.
But what I can do is I can create a pattern of behaviour, given the one that they did to Donald Trump in the Newsnight one. Then I create another pattern where they've had to apologise to Rupert Lowe 4 times in 3 months for editorial mistakes. They all trend in one direction. That is, it's just basic evidence of institutional bias. If all your mistakes trend in one direction, it's not a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just overlook the fact that the BBC, even the news division, is megalithic. It is so big, so sprawling. Mistakes are going to happen every day. And remember, all eyes are on you when you're at the BBC.
Well, these are two...
Defaming the President of the United States.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. But what I'm saying is that these mistakes will happen. It's just the nature of a large organisation that everybody is watching and everybody's waiting for them to say.
Are there any mistakes that make Donald Trump look good that the BBC have outputted in the, since 2016 when he was first elected president?
I couldn't tell you.
And that's the point. I can't think of a single thing the BBC has put out that even could be positioned as kind of neutral on Donald Trump. Everything is always framed.
I don't think that's fair.
So this is
I don't think that's fair.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Look at everything.
So hang on. So you've just said everything,
pretty
by which
much.
we mean everything.
Pretty much. I'd say 90% of its editorial content has been not necessarily positioning him as the evil villain, but it's always framed in a negative perspective, and that's my point about fake news. And it's always the kind of the Trump line is it's not just an outright lie. It is the manipulation of language. It's the positioning of certain things. It's where you put facts in the story is also part of a fake news directive, and that seems to be what the BBC has done.
Okay,
they don't outright lie.
Lost for words here. So you've said that in all of the coverage of Trump from the BBC, and remember this is a man who's been on television for decades, all of it, you say that none of it has been neutral.
No.
What's the definition of neutral?
Neutral, so this is the thing. Neutral and balanced aren't the same thing. Neutral is basically...
I think that's fair.
Yeah, so this is where the BBC also get it wrong. But what I would say is the BBC's approach to Trump is he's the bad guy. He has to be taken down at all costs.
I don't think that's fair at all. So if I can find you one article where he's not made out as the bad guy...
Well, they've put him in the doghouse over exiting the Paris Agreement on net zero. They've put him in the doghouse over the ICE raids, which is something he said he would do, which is to deport illegal immigrants. They've put him in the doghouse over the tariffs, which, of course, apparently is so bad for the world economy, but is improved American trading terms.
They were salivating at the prospect of Donald Trump failing to get peace in Gaza. The woman in Tel Aviv, she looked absolutely miserable at the prospect of peace being there. That was the point. She was like, oh no, Donald Trump of all people has been able to do something.
So now we're reaching for your subjective interpretations of somebody's mood when they're reporting. That's a bit of a reach, Peter.
No, really, not when I've got tons of evidence to say that all the mistakes happen in one direction.
But the point is, you've made an argument that requires one example to be able to shatter your argument.
Well,
that's pretty punchy, even for a Sunday morning.
I'm going to say, I've made punchier.
Now, what's interesting is that many of my viewers and listeners, Sebastian, will feel gaslit by people defending the BBC, saying, look, there isn't a bias problem. It's great journalism. It's the most trusted news source in the world. So what would you say to those listening who can't watch the BBC anymore because they don't believe a word of it?
I'm not surprised that they're listening to this programme because they're going to look for alternatives. But what I would say...
Well, we're opinion-led. You know, this is not a news channel.
Okay, fair enough.
And if I was on the BBC, I'd work as hard as possible to make it boring because that's the job of the BBC. But here we debate stuff, and my politics are not hidden. But the BBC, how do you handle this trust deficit at the moment?
Well, I think it's something that the BBC has to work really hard to regain. If that is indeed the problem,
but you have to acknowledge it in the first place, don't you?
Well, yeah, of course, but it's just the nature of having a state broadcaster. They do acknowledge it.
No, they don't. If you actually, the board's decision on this alone from last night, it's split down the middle about whether they've
apologised to the president.
That's not an apology. That is.
I'm
sorry.
We're through the looking glass with you, Peter. Everything's the opposite.
Yes, because unfortunately,
what colour's the sky?
Ironically, for the words newspeak, which was formed by George Orwell, who worked for the BBC.
Sebastian, as my teenage son would say, that apology was sorry but not sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, I think you have to be able to hold your hands up when you make mistakes. The problem is, as I say, the BBC is so big, there will be mistakes made every day in that
Do
organisation.
you think that the BBC...
As there will be in this
do you think it has a left-leaning bias, do you think?
No, I don't think so. And look, this has been the age-old accusation, hasn't it, against the BBC? I think they get a lot of accusations of right-leaning bias as well from people that I know.
Where do you think they are then on the spectrum? Do you think they're bang in the middle overall?
I wouldn't be able to pin a tail on the donkey, but I think the point is, if you're getting those arguments from either side...
51% left
48, 52, should we say?
Are you going down this line of if they're annoying everybody, then they must be right? Because you can actually you can annoy everybody and still be wrong.
That's very true. But I think the fact that it comes from both sides negates your argument that there is this
sides with any kind of credibility.
right-wing or left-wing bias.
When they've defamed the President of the United States, and you've got one little group complaining that they're not being nice to Hamas, I don't think they're quite level accusations of kind of credibility, if I'm being honest.
All right. Let me give Kitty, if I can, James, the last word on this. We'll just give you a chance to gather that clip. Let me know when it's ready, James. And here we go. This is Kitty with a voice note on the BBC.
Britain definitely does not need a state broadcaster. The days of channels are over, and it's content streaming now. And the BBC has just arrogantly plodded on with all of its channels because it has had the licence fee to support it. And where your guests say, oh, the BBC's good because they do Traitors, that's a production company doing Traitors, and that production company could sell that content to Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of the other streamers. The reality is that if the BBC went subscription, they do not have enough good stuff and enough things that people want to watch that are unbiased to keep them going, and they're wasting our money. The BBC needs to go.
Thank you, Kitty, for an excellent voice note. Next up, is Angela Rayner Britain's next Prime Minister?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:41 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. The Sunday Telegraph. Angela Rayner plots move against Starmer. Well, this is quite significant, isn't it? This is a former Deputy Prime Minister who, the papers are reporting today, is briefing friends, offering cabinet jobs and sounding out support for a potential leadership bid. Here's the thing. She may not share your politics, Peter Barnes, but she is one of those Heineken politicians that reaches the parts others don't.
Well, you say that, but I think this story is a little bit of a damp squib, because I don't think she's going to be an MP at the next general election. When you actually look at the constituency makeup, I look at the voter trends. It's the same with West Streeting, it's the same with Yvette Cooper, Shabnam Mahmood, she's on the way out. This is the big thing, that where Keir Starmer is actually in a very strong position, because he's the only one out of the cabinet likely to stay who would challenge him for the leadership. So everyone's running around saying she's giving out all these jobs. It's basically the captain of the Titanic giving out positions to a sinking ship. It's a kind of a bit pointless. It's good Westminster kind of palace intrigue story, but when you look at it from a data point of view, she doesn't stand a chance, so I don't really get why anybody's backing her.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, could they not manoeuvre her into a different seat at the next election?
So yes, they can do that, and I don't like it when MPs do that. But the thing is, she has that much baggage with her now that no matter where she goes, even if she moves to a very safe Labour seat, even that is now under threat, given the fact that we live in a very fragmented ecosystem on the left of politics, given the rise of your party and the Green Party, who are due to take over as the dominant left-wing force in this country, which terrifies the hell out of me. You know, the Labour Party is on the decline from all the statistics that we've got, and it's all of their own making. But you know, Angela Rayner is one of those people where I think she's missed her moment. I really do.
I'm not so sure, Jonathan. Sebastian, because I think that, you know, notwithstanding politics and various things that she's done, including the workers' rights legislation, which even Tony Blair said is going to hurt the economy, and the renters' rights legislation, which many are arguing is going to put pressure on housing. But notwithstanding those two policies and calling Tories scum, she's charismatic, she's a national figure, and I think she's got the Boris factor. I do think that she's got that cut through that other politicians don't have.
Yeah, she's a real asset to the Labour Party, and it was a real shame to see her go. Look, big story that if she's plotting a move against the Prime Minister, it's one story. She
can't stand him, can she, Sebastian?
I would be very careful to come out and put any truth to this at this stage. What I would say to anybody who's having thoughts like this, look at your Labour membership card. It says country before party, and I would say to all MPs, that is what you should do. And that means sticking on side, getting this administration through. Because what we've had 2 years, 3 years, we lose a Prime Minister at the moment at this rate.
We're becoming Australia, which is
that's it, or Italy or Greece, and we can't afford to do that, because every time you start again, you start from scratch, and you've got a new administration, a new set of plans. We need continuity.
Well, the funny thing is, if I can just put my brain inside the head of a Labour supporter, then I would want to get rid of Starmer. If I wanted to win the next election, I would consider the man to be an election liability, and also I don't think very gifted at politics. So I think if I was a Labour supporter, I would say a change can't come too soon.
See, I think that falls into one of the biggest traps we have in politics, which is that we think too short term. Extend the timeline. We've got a few years.
But will Starmer ever get the hang of this?
No.
He's not a good Prime Minister.
He's been underestimated from day dot. He wasn't expected to boot out Corbyn and turn around the party. He wasn't expected to win an election, and now we're all saying he won't turn the country around.
To be honest, he succeeded on the back of everybody else's failure. That's the thing. So Labour didn't win the last general election. The Conservatives lost it. I think that's an important factor, considering the fact that they might have this massive majority, but he's got the second lowest turnout and the lowest level of
you could say that about 2017 as well. And Corbyn managed to fumble that.
I did.
But then why didn't Corbyn win?
Oh, because
Theresa May was weak as anything.
Because you can't have a person like Jeremy Corbyn being Prime Minister. The patriotism argument killed him. But when you actually look at this from the Labour perspective, they've got to keep Keir Starmer to stand any chance of staying relevant, because with the Greens powering through, your party, for example, if that vote, as it stands now, switched back, that's 44 seats Labour would hold. If it moves, they've gone. This is the difference in marginal constituencies between an actual majority in the House of Commons and winning in terms of seat number, winning in terms of the kind of the first past the post system. On a kind of institutional level, it's just not.
See,
it's not viable for them to get rid of it.
The big spectre of British politics, which is reform. If you are on the left and you have got the choice between Labour and reform, it's going to be Labour any day. And I think that is what's ultimately going to.
This takes me back to Rayner, because Rayner is a populist politician, and she's a disturber of the SHIT, right? She's a troublemaker. And she
you know
knows,
what?
she knows a catchphrase. She knows a headline.
And you mentioned employment rights and how unpopular you suggested they were. The polling shows otherwise, especially among Reform voters.
Yes, however, at the moment,
and this is an
everybody's
area
got
where
a job.
Farage is really, really out of step.
Yes, I agree with you on that. I'm no Reform fan, but what I will say is everybody's in favour of the employment rights now. What they won't be in favour of employment rights when they don't have a job, thanks to Rachel Reeves in a couple of weeks.
Unemployment's already gone up to 5% since Labour got to power, from 4.1 in July of last year. Mary is on the line. Mary's called us. Good morning, Mary. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. We've got lovely Sebastian and Peter here.
Yes, I can see, yes.
Now, Mary, what do you think? Prime Minister Angela Rayner, are you ready?
Well, I personally would say God forbid, but if that has to happen, what also interests me is who's she going to have living in number 11 next door to her? Because in my view, neither she nor Mrs. Thebes, excuse me, I'm going to cough.
Oh, bless you, Mary. Oh, dear.
Neither of them are very good at arithmetic.
Oh, Mary, you're right about that, and that's a brilliant contribution. I wish, Mary, we had longer to speak on that, but Mary concerned that even if you changed the leader, not much would change within the administration and the party could shift leftwards. Well, we're going to stay on this, and next up, I'm going to ask a simple question to you and to my guests in the studio. Should Sir Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves before the 26th of November budget in order to save the economy and save his job? That's next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's Talk Breakfast. Really enjoying your company. 8:51 in the morning on a Sunday. I hope your weekend's going well. A big hour at 9 o'clock. Annunziata Rees-Mogg is our star booking at 9 a.m. I'll be asking her, does Britain need a national state broadcaster? We'll get to that at 9 o'clock, but I'm delighted to say in the studio we have Peter Barnes, political strategist, and Labour councillor Sebastian Salek. And Sebastian, should Sir Keir Starmer sack Rachel Reeves before the budget in order to save the economy and his job?
What a question. Of course not.
Yeah,
I would.
I'm going to say it's a Sunday, isn't it?
I'm not even kidding, right? Hand on heart, I would, if I was the PM, I would do that.
Let's war game this. What would you do?
I would
who'd you get in?
I'd find out, who's that Scottish guy that's a senior figure within the party? He's sort of got fair hair and, what's his name?
Alistair Carmichael.
No, it's another one. We'll get his name. I'll get his name in a minute.
Danny Alexander.
No,
not Douglas Alexander. God, I'm full of Lib Dems today. What's this all about?
There's another guy and it'll come to me, but he's a wily Scot.
Okay,
anyway,
get a Scot in.
What I would do is I would get sort of, a sensible grown-up within the cabinet to become Chancellor. It would be the equivalent of Jeremy Hunt under Rishi Sunak, right? A safe pair of hands to say, do you know something? This whole plan hasn't worked. We're going to break the manifesto pledge. We're going to keep it simple, raise income tax. We're going to balance the economy. We're going to cut spending, and we are going to have a bit of austerity, and we will get this train back on track, because Rachel Reeves ain't going to do that.
Do you think that's politically sustainable?
I think it would be
a
stroke of genius. I think it would be a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I should be Prime Minister, because I've got the judgment, Peter.
No.
Starmer, if he sacks, what he does, he sacks Rachel Reeves, not after the budget, before the budget, and get a grown-up in to rewrite the whole thing. You've got a week and a half. A lot of budgets are done the day before.
Yeah, that's true. I've been in the room where they've been put together. Usually it's literally minutes before. But what I will say is, it doesn't really matter whether she stays or goes, because the problem that the Labour Party have done to the economy is this kind of the wait period where they've allowed speculation, and the speculation disturbs the market, and the market doesn't like that. It likes to know what's happening, and they've confused stability with predictability.
Yeah.
In other words, they just think if we just keep everything fine, then the markets will like that.
Do you mean the wait period up until the budget?
Yes. So she
what
did
budget
that.
hasn't had speculation? No, so that's a natural feature, isn't it?
But what you don't do is, last week, you don't do a big speech at 8 a.m, get everybody up in the morning to listen to Rachel Reeves, which is a war crime in itself, in my opinion, and then start talking about raising income tax. All the banks, all the markets, every business moves to make that decision. You then drop it. They don't like it when you do that.
Of course they don't.
Because it's the same with the green stuff.
Numbers come in, they show things have improved, they show you don't have to break your manifesto pledge. Aren't you going to take that option, whatever you've said?
Yeah, but what you shouldn't do is make the speech in the first place.
But you didn't know at the time because you hadn't had those numbers.
But politically, this is the point. It's politically she shouldn't have done it, and economically she shouldn't have done it.
Because if you're planning to do that, you've got to roll that pitch in advance.
They shouldn't have told people they were planning to do it.
They should have done it. Political ineptitude, isn't it?
But no, come on, if you're going to do something that big, you have to signal it beforehand.
No, you don't. That's the big problem.
Hang on, explain that. I'm stunned to hear that from a political analyst. Tell me why not.
Because what you do is, yet again, you just create this kind of chaos. It's political smoke more than anything. I think a lot of it is kind of done deliberately. It's Morgan McSweeney through and through. But what you do is you kind of create so much drama that actually the economics kind of goes out the window and nobody pays attention to the terrible numbers. But what Rachel Reeves didn't have is actually the kind of the political acumen to understand that if you give that speech, what it's actually going to do to the markets itself, and they just
just to be clear here, if you're suggesting if we're going to raise taxes on almost everybody in the country, we should do that by surprise.
Well, it's kind of you're still raising taxes on everybody anyway. Everybody knows that's on the budget.
Yeah, whatever.
No, you're not though, because income tax is sweeping. If you're going for non-doms or whoever else,
what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen in the budget? You've got rid of the 2p one.
Mercifully, I don't know.
No, but however, there's already been reported there are over 100 tax raises on the table in the budget. That is at a minimum.
But those are targeted. The issue with income tax is that it's sweeping and affecting a broad portion of the population.
Over 100 different taxes,
why would you know that
same
explain to me,
thing.
why would you do that by surprise?
Because
what is the political advantage of doing that?
Because what you do is
shock the markets, shock the people, shock everybody.
Well,
that's not a way to play politics.
We've shocked the markets anyway.
How so?
Well, because what's happened is since Rachel Reeves signalled that she's not going to raise income tax, the cost of government borrowing rose because the markets are not happy with that strategy. They actually loved the income tax rise. They don't care about manifesto pledges. They care about viability of the British economy.
The yields came down again that day.
Yeah, but it's still
later that day, but they went up. There was an immediate market reaction.
There was, and then it reversed.
Okay, well, I'll take that point. That's fair enough. Okay, that's good. If you can win an argument with facts, I'm happy with that. But here's the issue, which is that Rachel Reeves rolled the pitch for income tax rises and then decided not to raise income tax. That's not a great move, is it?
Well, it is, because what happened in the middle was they got updated
Is this an episode of The Thick of It? Well, hang on. How is that good?
So,
how is it good that she said, I'll raise income tax and then I won't?
Okay, so if you think you're going to have your arm amputated, and then you get some information saying, actually, arm is fine, you probably shouldn't amputate your arm.
Yeah, but you shouldn't go around telling the world you've got to have your arm amputated.
Well, you probably should if it's going to affect a lot of people. You tell your close friends and family, wouldn't you? Sit them down and you say, look, mate, this thing's not going to be here in 3 years' time.
However, she would have known that the OBR was going to revise the forecast. That is the point of the Treasury.
Well, she wouldn't have known that they were going to be...
Yes, she would have
known.
Hang
on. Are we saying that good economic news is a bad thing? And now we're into a different form of doublespeak.
I think it's great.
Is doing a bit of grave turning.
To be honest, I don't really think any of it's good economic news because it's not good economic news.
Are you concerned that since July 2024 we've had higher inflation, higher government borrowing costs, including higher than under Liz Truss after the mini budget, higher unemployment and lower growth? Is that a concern? I mean, every single metric is bad.
Of course, it's all a concern, but it's a natural
year and a half
feature.
in. Well, we were told things would get better.
So put it like this: what would you have hoped would have happened in a year of economic management?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you: higher growth, and less. High cost of government borrowing. Those are the two things. So now I could tell you how I'd do that, which is I would cut public spending, and then I would allow myself to reduce taxes, which provably increases economic growth.
Right.
And with that, with a higher economic growth, you then have better projections from the OBR, and then international bond markets say, oh look, Britain's becoming viable again. It's literally a virtuous circle.
So point to me a government that has managed to do that in a year.
Well, that's not the point, really, is it?
I can, of course. Argentina. Well, I'll give you Argentina, but I'll give you Rishi Sunak in the final year of his premiership.
Yes, exactly.
When he steadied the boat, they cut spending and they reassured the markets, so they had a plan, at which point the cost of gilt yields dropped and the economy grew. And when they went to the country, number one in the G7 for economic growth.
Yeah. As we were a quarter ago.
Yes, and now we're on 0.1%.
Yes,
which is actually
comparing to our peers.
of
if
the
you're
government.
using that metric, I'll use it too.
Well, I tell you what, let's get some common sense. Georgina in London. Good morning, Georgina.
Good morning. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Sebastian. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Georgina.
I don't know what's going on here. I think there's been a drop in IQ somewhere. We need a replacement for the whole of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer is on his way out. There's nothing more sure. And you're saying about Rachel Reeves or Angela Rayner taking the reins on this one. Sebastian, I don't know whether you've seen the state of the country at the moment, but it now resembles a third world country in both look and culture. We've got people being stabbed in the streets, machete fights, thievery's gone through the roof, and it's been allowed to get to epidemic proportions under Labour. Listen, I know under Boris it was pretty darn grim. But anyone can see, and you've got to admit, you can't sit there and say that things are hunky-dory, because I'm telling you, young man.
Georgina, I wish we had longer. Last word, Sebastian.
Georgina, you and I both live in London. Crime rates are falling in London. I know perception of crime is high, and that's completely valid, and we have to think about how people feel, but it is becoming a safer city, and I'm really happy about that.
And I will say a lot of it is a legacy of Tory misrule. Sebastian Salek and Peter Barnes, thank you. Stay.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
In terms of your question around
...2005 on its Eurosceptic bias. It banned Eurosceptic voices, those against us joining the Euro, against us signing up to a European constitution, were banned from appearing. You've got Martin Bashir and his treatment of Princess Diana that was completely morally bankrupt. You've got Cliff Richard, where they were behaved horrifically. And then in more modern times, you've got anti-trans being silenced. They didn't cover the Tavistock as they should have as a public interest broadcaster. You've got the anti-Semitism report and the treatment of, not calling Hamas terrorists. And of course, you've got Donald Trump. That this is an organisation the British people have to pay for. We fund it, and yet it doesn't represent the British people.
No, and it misrepresents the leader of the free world, Donald Trump. We know, don't we, Annunciata, that Donald Trump's not a perfect human being. He's no angel. He's a complex political personality. But he was misrepresented in not just one, but two flagship BBC shows, Panorama and Newsnight. It's embarrassing for the BBC, and to a degree, it is now a diplomatic incident.
Of course it is. That if you're going to have a national broadcaster, it has to be part of your international relations. And by undermining those completely, I mean, Keir loves to flaunt how well he gets on with Donald Trump. And yet in the background, you have a supposed news organisation, a supposedly impartial news organisation, completely lying about what Donald Trump said. And you've got Newsnight, you've got Panorama, but you've also got the Wreath Lectures, where they seem to have chosen someone well known for despising Trump, for calling him a fascist. Well, I think he actually called him a fasci. Is that the new terminology? But it's certainly just as rude and completely untrue. You cannot have this going on as a government and taxpayer-funded organisation.
And my viewers and listeners are spitting feathers about the idea that the taxpayer may pick up the bill for any successful legal action by Donald Trump. Quite clearly, they've got enough money. I think their revenue beyond the licence fee is around $5 billion in total, including revenue from BBC Enterprises, all the rest of it, Annunciata. If there is a bill, it's going to come out of their budget, and they've got plenty of cash floating around. They could sack a few middle managers or a few well-paid stars.
They've got plenty of money sloshing around because all of us pay for it. And this would be a very large number of licence fee payers. I forget the exact figure. Subs every year, and mine's about to go out, and my eyes watered as I got we're about to take another £168 out of your account.
It's going to be 180 from April.
I'm glad I renew in December. But excuse me.
Yes,
I think this gives the government the perfect opportunity to say this is the moment to withdraw the current setup, to defund the BBC. If it is as wonderful as its supporters say, people will subscribe to it. Advertisers will want to advertise on it for its huge audience. It could stand on its own, and it could foot these sorts of bills when it gets things very clearly wrong in a morally bankrupt way.
How would you manage that transition, though? Because clearly they've got multiple channels, TV, online, radio, and all the rest of it, stars on big salaries and bulletproof contracts. Would the phasing out of the licence fee take a few years?
You do it in the way that British Telecom was privatised, that you just offload it from the government books and you float it. It is a huge organisation. That is one of its big problems. It is competing with private media in every single aspect of our lives, from individual YouTubers through to Sky and huge television channels. It tries to compete with Netflix, that has completely different backing and funding, and then it wonders why it doesn't always win. And people say, but it provides us with celebrity traitors, which actually I rather enjoyed until I saw a spoiler and had to give up. I was slightly behind. It takes up a lot of time watching traitors. Anyway, those sorts of programmes are commercially viable. What is not commercially viable, in my view, is left-wing biased news and current affairs reporting that bears no reality to the truth.
What would you say, though, to the millions of people that enjoy BBC radio and television on a daily basis around the country? The fact that it's the cost of a cup of coffee a week, the soft international diplomatic power of the BBC, and the fact that the BBC is the most trusted news-gathering organisation, not just in Britain, but the world.
Well, I think it's proven that its soft power is not always a positive thing. That falling out in a very big way with our closest ally and biggest supporter, the leader of the free world, is not soft power. It is actively dangerous for our country. And you can take the soft power, but you've got to be responsible with it, and it isn't. And it hasn't been for a very long time.
And indeed, reporting with glee that a hospital bombed early in the Gaza war was the responsibility of the Israeli forces, when in fact it was Hamas that were responsible for that atrocity.
Absolutely.
No apology, no correction.
Hamas, who it wouldn't call terrorists, despite the fact they're a prescribed terrorist organisation by our country, that it is not telling the truth. It is not helping the British cause. If it's as wonderful as people say, and I'm very sceptical on that view myself, those that like it will subscribe. Those who like it will watch it, and advertisers will want their business. It will survive in the free market if it does its job well. At the moment, it should not be funded by the British taxpayer, who it is not serving at all.
Annunciata political insiders have told this programme Sir Keir Starmer will be gone in less than a year. So the runners and riders at the moment, Andy Burnham, Wes Streeting, Ed Miliband. Well, the dark horse candidate appears to be Angela Rayner. And I think the proof of the fact that she's considering a bid for the top job is on the front page of today's Sunday Mirror. Rayner, I will keep fighting for ordinary people. Any suggestion of leadership ambitions is tittle-tattle. I think what that means is, I want the job.
Of course it does, and she always has. The reason that Keir Starmer put her in his cabinet in the first place was because she was a threat. She has a large constituency on the left of the Labour Party who support her. She has now, I believe, garnered the support of a backbench group called Tribune, who were formed to push through, well, to prevent welfare reform. Already have 70 members, of becoming the largest caucus on the backbenches of the Labour Party. She is the figurehead of many of the left of the party, and Keir Starmer was a placeholder. That after Jeremy Corbyn, we forget politics very, very quickly, but in 2019, Boris Johnson won an absolute landslide. Labour thought there was no coming back from it. They had been wiped out pretty much with Jeremy Corbyn's disastrous campaign. And they thought, we need someone to steady the ship, keep the reins together whilst we rebuild from a low base and prepare for government in 10 or 15 years. Of course, they won 5 years later. They were totally unprepared for government, but they also still had the temporary man at the helm. None of them are happy with this situation. He hasn't proved to be a good prime minister. He hasn't been able to get a strong team around him. He has become the most unpopular prime minister since records began, and they want rid. I think this is clear to everyone. The runners and riders, I mean, be careful what you wish for. We might not like Keir Starmer, but just look at who might replace him. The most popular is Ed Miliband, who I think is deeply dangerous for this country. And if you think that Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner are running the economy badly, just you wait till you see what he will have in store. And Angela Rayner from the backbenches has a voice, can be free to say what she thinks, does not have to support Keir Starmer, and is a much bigger threat than she was tucked away pretending to try and build houses.
Illegal immigration is tearing us apart, says Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, in today's Sunday Times Annunciata. Do you think this rather more robust figure in the Home Office is going to make a difference, given the fact that she's looking at a Danish solution to immigration and with stronger signals that she's going to stop the boats?
Well, she also has her eye on being the next Prime Minister. And if anything should be clear from every poll that we have had in this country for years now, it's that you need to be strong on immigration if the British people are to back you at all. Labour gave it lip service prior to 2014. They were going to smash the gangs. It clearly didn't happen. I fear this is more strong words from Mahmood, but she is an ambitious woman, and I can only hope that whether she gets the leadership or not, she does actually manage to have some impact on the huge numbers of people breaking into our country illegally, disappearing into our society, unknown, undocumented, and with an amazingly large number of them attacking and hurting British people. We are an island. We have got to protect our borders. We have got to throw out anyone who arrives here illegally. It was under the Conservatives a criminal offence to break into the UK. Unfortunately, Labour undid that. They need to bring that back as a crime so you can deport immediately if you get here illegally. Shabana Mahmood talks strong words. She hasn't always been on top of her brief. When she was at Justice, she had no idea that the Criminal Sentencing Council was trying to give lesser sentences to people for all sorts of pathetic reasons, like they happen to be female, which I think is ridiculous. If I've done the crime, I should get the same penalty as you. But on this issue, I think she knows the stakes are high and her ambition is big. For herself, we can only hope that's of benefit to the country.
Powerful words from Annunziata Rees-Mogg, who is the head of comms at Popular Conservatism. Annunziata, thank you so much for that compelling stuff. Your reaction to what Annunziata Rees-Mogg has had to say: Labour won't make a difference when it comes to boats and illegal immigration. What do you think? You trust Shabana Mahmood to tackle this problem head on? 0344 499 1000. Next up, does Britain still need a national state broadcaster? Well, I'll be asking a former big star who was cancelled by the BBC.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. And I've got to say, Peter Cardwell has booked a couple of excellent people for his show in just a few minutes' time. Let's take a look at this. We've got Immigration Minister Mike Tapp, who's on at 10:40 a.m. and Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, at 10:50. So that's going to be very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing the show when he comes on air at that exact time. So, folks, listen, lots and lots to get through. But I've got to tell you that last weekend we had an amazing time, Remembrance Weekend, when we looked back at the contribution of our veterans, who are living and some have passed, in 2 world wars, heroism which has led to the freedom that we now enjoy and my ability to be on the radio and TV and say all of the things that I think, and for you to do the same. So it was a very, very special weekend celebrating the legacy of those who have done so much for us. We did an interview with Ant Middleton, who is a former military veteran himself. It was a great interview. It was very interesting. It was all-encompassing. It went viral on the internet. Go to Talk on YouTube and you'll find the interview. Over 1 million people listened. But I got an amazing email from one gentleman that wanted to draw attention to the sheer scale of the war efforts and the extent to which people of all different backgrounds, races and religions contributed to the successful war effort. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read out this wonderful letter from a listener/viewer to the show. Dear Mr. Dolan, I'm writing in response to the recent talkTV segment featuring Ant Middleton's remarks about Adil Ray on 8th of November, particularly the comment that he would get him by the scruff of the neck and put him back on the beaches of Normandy, where he would look left and right and explain that people would look nothing like him. Now, this brilliant viewer goes on to say, while heated exchanges happen in live debate, comments like this risk perpetuating a narrow view of British wartime history. They unintentionally erase the deeply diverse contribution of people from across the Empire and Commonwealth who fought for the United Kingdom. The historical reality is clear, says this viewer. Britain did not stand alone in the First or Second World War. Its strength and ultimately its survival depended heavily on soldiers from India, Africa, the Caribbean, and many other parts of the empire. Among them were hundreds of thousands of Indian troops of different backgrounds and faiths. That's right, hundreds of thousands of Indian troops of different backgrounds and faiths. Speaking as someone from a Sikh background, I feel enormous pride in the role that Sikhs played. Though a small minority within India, they made an outsized contribution to the Indian army in both world wars. Winston Churchill himself acknowledged this when he said, British people are highly indebted and obliged to Sikhs in the war. They fought and died for us wearing their turbans. He goes on to say, this is part of our shared national story. When we talk about Britishness and the defence of this country, it should include the Sikh soldiers who fought in turbans, the African regiments who protected supply lines, the Caribbean pilots who flew missions over Europe, and many others who stood with Britain at its darkest hour. To suggest that someone like Adil Ray would look nothing like those on the beaches of Normandy overlooks the history of collective struggle and sacrifice which has secured the freedom of this country. He says, I'm writing to you. Your platform has influence. The way history and identity are discussed on talkTV can either unite or divide. I simply hope that future conversations about British heritage recognise the full diversity of those who built and defended this nation. It would be valuable, says this wonderful viewer, for talkTV to explore this topic in more depth, perhaps with a segment highlighting the Commonwealth contribution in both world wars. Many families carry these stories with quiet pride, and it would mean a great deal to see them represented fairly and accurately in our national dialogue. He says, thank you for reading this letter. My intention is not to criticise, but to contribute constructively, acknowledging the diverse communities who fought for Britain. It does not weaken our history, it enriches it. Yours sincerely, Inderjit Singh Parmar. And sir, thank you so much for quite the most spectacular letter, and what a privilege it was to read it out. Thank you, Mr. Parmar. Well, there you go. What a great debate. And I'm delighted to say now, with more common sense, just like that lovely letter, is former BBC star Alex Dyke. Alex, great to see you.
Nice to see you, Mark.
What a lovely letter from Mr. Parmar there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah. I'm so glad you read that out, because
we wouldn't
there are so many people. There are so many people that helped in the Second World War. I mean, what the Polish did for us was absolutely amazing, and sometimes these people are not recognised.
Most definitely, exactly, and there is no skin colour or look for any British hero that's essentially saved the freedom of this country.
Absolutely.
Listen, one thing that is a central plank in this particular country is the BBC, our national state broadcaster. You worked there for many years, a big BBC star, at least a decade longer?
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years, right? And you're stalwart on the radio. And you had an army of fans. The BBC has a contribution to make, but the question that is now, essentially a feature of today's programme, Donald Trump is suing the Beeb for $5 billion. It could grow in number. Who knows who's going to foot the bill if he wins. Does Britain still need a national state broadcaster?
Right, well, let me just start by saying anyone who slags the BBC off, and I've done that before, I think anyone who's grown up in Britain has a soft spot for the BBC because they grew up watching Crackerjack or The Magic Roundabout or Multicoloured Swap Shop, Saturday Superstore. So we grow up, traditionally we've grown up in families that have had the BBC on. So we have a warm place in our hearts for the BBC. But they do test your love, don't they? The BBC really have tested our love. I think we need the BBC. I think we need someone to go in and dice it up and say, we don't need Radio 1 Extra. We don't need, at the moment, the nice-to-haves like Radio 4 Extra. Let's get rid of things like that. Let's sell those off. Let's sell off some of the BBC archive or hire out some of the BBC archive so other people can run these. We don't need the... You and I don't, and your viewers and listeners don't need the BBC giving us suggestions for a playlist. We've all got Apple Music or Spotify. We can find songs that we like to listen to. Let's get the BBC back to doing what it did well. And one of the problems for the Director General was the BBC has got too big. It's impossible to manage. It's like the NHS. So back in the days when we were growing up and it was Top of the Pops and Morecambe and Wise and the Two Ronnies, the golden era of the BBC, it was much easier to manage. We do need the BBC, but not the current BBC we have.
And actually, staff salaries were proportionally much lower in the 1960s, the 70s and the 80s.
Yes, and if you were a star, if you were Dick Emery or Eric and Ernie, you were out doing summer shows and pantos. If you were a Radio 1 DJ, you were out doing discos. If you were Terry Wogan on Radio 2, you were opening supermarkets.
100%.
The BBC gave you a platform to earn good money. They didn't necessarily pay you the mega bucks back in the day.
Well, that's right. A friend of mine was one of the faces of BBC News in the 1980s and 90s. And the salary, his final salary before he moved over to ITN was £44,000. Now, of course, it's decent whack of cash, but that's not life-changing money, is it? A similar figure now would be on 10 times that. I mean, Hugh Edwards was the face of BBC News before his disgraceful departure, and he was on £500,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, why do the Beeb pay top dollar? Zoe Ball, I always mention her and I feel bad because I'm sure she's a nice lady, £1 million a year to play records on the radio. £1 million a year.
Zoe Ball, a nice lady, I've met her, nice lady, good broadcaster. When Chris Evans went to Virgin, she lost 1 million listeners and was paid £1 million bonus.
Wow.
So that's how crazy the BBC are. And I don't mean to talk ill of Zoe Ball. I'm just saying that's a fact that's happened. I think the BBC's problem is if you and I are happy to pay the licence fee, we need, first of all, to like the BBC and respect it. We want to feel part of it. We don't want to be. We don't want to feel alienated or forgotten by the BBC. And it's got to make the programmes that the BBC should be making. A good example is Repair Shop. It took 10 years to get Repair Shop commissioned on the BBC. ITV, Sky, they're never going to make a programme like Repair Shop until the BBC make one and turn it into a hit.
A bit like that with Bake Off, because Bake Off looks like an obvious hit now, but actually a show in which people put stuff in the oven for an hour, it might on paper be or not be that compelling, but the BBC made a hit out of it.
The BBC, and they film it beautifully and it's wonderfully directed. Songs of praise is another thing that if you have faith, the BBC should be making songs of praise. ITV don't want to be doing it. They know they're not going to get any.
Well, if they did it, it would be Anton Deck singing, and I don't think that's a good idea.
It probably would, with a soft rap somewhere in there. And another good example is Top Gear, which was on its knees until Jeremy Clarkson and the crew came in and made it the world's biggest watch programme. ITV never would have made Top Gear, and if they did, it would have been on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, maybe to keep some sponsors happy. Traitors. We don't need Traitors on the BBC. You could watch Traitors on Sky.
Made
Netflix.
by an independent production company.
Independent production company. We don't need the BBC to show. It's nice that the BBC show it, but we don't need the BBC for that.
Yeah.
We need to dice it up, and I think I know the man who should be running the BBC. I think I know who it is.
And we're going to reveal the name of that man next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:34 Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. I will return on Friday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. I do hope you'll join me then. Thanks for all the emails, the calls, the texts and the voice notes. With me in the studio, BBC legend Alex Dyke, who is enjoying the freedom of being outside the corporation, because when you work for the BBC, you've got your hands tied, haven't you? You've got to be so careful, so politically correct. Otherwise, you're out.
Yeah. In fairness to the BBC, when I went there 15 years ago, the first day I was there, the boss said to me, they've paid their licence fee. This is a brilliant line. They've paid their licence fee, entertain them.
Oh.
And that was great, but it didn't last for long.
No, it didn't.
Because the shifting sands of the BBC. The BBC's a little bit like a warm bath. You know, you want to get in it, and once you get in it, it's hard to leave.
Yeah.
Because it's quite nice being within the BBC. The problem is a lot of the wonderful people who work at the BBC never listen or watch the commercial markets. Yeah. So they are shackled, and they also have their blinkers up to what is good broadcasting and what the people want. But I know the answer, Mark.
Well, listen, this is it. So there's a lot of talk about who would become the new Director General of the BBC. Michael Gove made a splash this week by suggesting that Piers Morgan should do it because he's an experienced journalist. Others have suggested that Michael Gove should do it because he's got political experience. He's not a lefty, so he might balance the place out. And he is both a former and current journalist. And the other option is Andrew Neil. But who's your suggestion?
My suggestion is someone who's a great businessman, someone who's a fabulous communicator, and someone who knows what it's like to be inside the BBC, and someone who's taken something and turned it into BBC Gold. And the new Director General of the BBC should be Jeremy Clarkson.
What an outstanding idea. This is a man that knows broadcasting inside out. He's not woke. He's not a leftist activist, and a very charismatic man. I mean, I think a lot of people would quite happily pay their licence fee if they thought he was in charge.
I think they would. And also, don't forget his farming programme. Amazon begged him not to do that, but he wanted to do it. He followed his gut instinct and made it a hit. So sometimes the suits who've never made programmes, no disrespect to them, don't know what's best for the viewer. And there's a man with the common touch. Jeremy Clarkson should be the next.
That is very interesting. Are you saying to Amazon after the Grand Tour, they wanted a Clarkson show, but they said, nah, don't do the farming, Jeremy? Is that what you're saying?
Everyone from the Grand Tour was offered their own series.
Right.
They went to Jeremy Clarkson. He said, you know, I think I want to make something on my farm. And apparently 3 or 4 executives and producers, including his good buddy Andy Willman, said, no, don't do this. It will be a car crash. But of course, it's been a massive hit all around the world.
Speaking of massive hit all around the world, there are very few shows now that the vast majority of the public sit down and watch. Strictly is, I think, one of them. And the other is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which returns to our TV screens this evening on ITV. Love it or hate it, it's still a hit, isn't it?
It is a hit, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why when you watch Strictly or I'm a Celebrity, it's exactly the same as it was the week before. They've just changed the people in the year before. They've just changed the people in it. But I think it was Chuck Berry who said, write a hit and then write it again.
Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it?
And that's what they've done with I'm a Celebrity, and it really does put bums on seats.
Well, it does. And what's quite interesting is we've got the salaries that have been leaked, which is very, very interesting, because actually the budgets are not quite what I thought they previously were. Back in the day, was it Nigel Farage that was paid £1.3 million?
He got 1.5. Colleen Rooney got 1.5 million. Noel Edmonds got £500,000. But I guess we have to remember ITV hasn't got any money. And it looks to me, Mark, like the big money they have got is going to the very young, because they are obsessed, like the BBC, with getting in young viewers who are probably get their fix of I'm a Celebrity in 30 seconds on TikTok.
Listen, Dean, you're going to have to send me the list of salaries, because it's all broken up here on this website.
Would you like mine?
Have you got them?
I've got them.
Big Alex Dyke has got them. Here we go. Thank you, Alex. You've always got my back. So here we go. Kelly Brook. We'll take her first. She is a model and former TV presenter.
Yeah.
She was in a relationship with Jason Statham, who's an action hero, Hollywood star, isn't she? And very fine young lady. 80 grand. Martin Kemp, who was in EastEnders Spandau Ballet, the band, and EastEnders, The Craze, which is a big movie.
Yeah.
95 grand. Now, does that surprise you? This is a movie star and pop star. Spandau Ballet were massive in the 80s. 95 grand, you and I would bite your hand off for that. But a star like him?
Yeah, well, I guess ITV think, you know, he's a great-looking guy. He's very popular with an older demographic as far as a female audience are concerned. But for Martin Kemp, he's going to go in there and he will then get loads of bookings for This Morning. He'll probably get a nice TV commercial for Omo or Daz or whatever today's top soap powder for making your whites whiter than white. But one of the things I wonder about it, Mark, is if you and I were going on there, I worry about the edit. Because if you and I were going on there and Kelly Brook said to me, so Alex, why are you doing this? I'd say, it's for the money. I'm doing it for the money. Why else would I eat kangaroo testicles?
It's my tax bill, dear.
Yeah, it's got to be for the money, and I worry about the edit as far as this is concerned.
Well, they can make you look any number of ways, can't they? They can make you look funny, they can make you look serious, like a troublemaker, and it can be career-ending. That's the thing, if you say the wrong thing. So, a good friend of the show, Christopher Biggins, got in hot water for some of his remarks whilst he was in I'm a Celebrity, even though I thought he was great in it. It seems, by the way, the best way to negotiate is when you don't need the money, because Jack Osborne is Ozzy Osbourne's son, and of course his mother is Sharon Osbourne. They are multi-millionaires. In fact, I think they're worth about 200 million.
Wow.
So when ITV come to you and they offer you the gig, it's basically a case of, I don't need this. And that is how you exact a fee, which he has, of £200,000.
Yeah.
Nice work.
And also, it's great for their social media, and young people are all about the social, media, aren't they? Getting their face all across the internet. The one thing about it, Mark, that this is how we've changed. Do you remember back in the 80s, Chris Tarrant on a Sunday night, he had a show called Tarrant on TV, and we would see clips of these kind of programs from Japanese television. About, you know, people who were being forced to have rats running over them in the jungle or whatever, and we would sit there and laugh, thinking these people are crazy. And then 25 years ago, it arrives in Britain.
Well, I can't wait to see Alex Dyke in the jungle in a year's time. 200 grand and worth every penny. Listen, we've got so much to get through, and I've got to tell you that there's a lot of people calling us about Shabana Mahmood. She's the Home Secretary, and she's got a plan to stop the boats and to tackle legal, mass and illegal immigration. And Paul in Leicester has called about that. Paul, welcome to Talk.
Morning, good morning.
Paul, I'm so glad that you've called us about this, because a lot of people are saying this is smoke and mirrors. They're not convinced that Labour will ever stop the boats. What do you think?
On the periphery, minimal, far too little, too late. 9.5 years ago, when the first real say we want the immigration control, the referendum, then 2019. They come in and think, Simon comes in and think, oh, the people don't really want that no more. But the quiet majority are just thinking, rightly or wrongly, oh, these might do what we want, even in services, not even though we know they wouldn't, and thinking, well, hold on, you're not doing what we want immigration controlled. And if he'd got any conviction about him on day one, outside number 10, he would have gone. And my Home Secretary is going to be, what's her name? What's her name? Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, sorry, are you thinking about a future Home Secretary under a different party?
No, Shabana Mahmood, would have said, this is going to be my Home Secretary.
Oh, yeah.
Not mealy-mouthed, no conviction about Cooper, that was awful as an Home Secretary before. He could have said that, and then one of the days she will have the illegal situation stopped. Something illegal, it makes a mockery of everything. She will have that sorted out by Denmark or not. Denmark, one of the most passive countries in the world.
Yeah.
Doing stuff. It's just absolutely shambolic, and they're just trying to plug holes in. They've just gone, haven't they? They've just gone. You know, it's like they're in analog, trying to catch up with the rest of us in digital. And just, what do you do?
That is a brilliant way of putting it. So, Paul, you don't think all these noises about Denmark and about making people wait 10 years before they get benefits, you don't see that as anything that's going to really move the dial?
It's not, is it? Because it's like it's just a mishmash. Like back in the day in the 90s stuff, you used to go to a club and stuff like that, and it used to be their guy counting you in and counting you out.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's some form of order. You understood that then. It's a security reason. It's everything else, fine, all that. And then, but when that doesn't happen, well, where do you start? You're trying to plug something in. You're trying to put the plug back into the hole, aren't you?
Alex Dyke is with us, Paul. Alex, what do you think about this? Well, Paul is essentially saying that you can have all the headlines you like. Nothing's really going to change.
Well, I tell you what, Mark, I listened to you this morning all the way up. I put the radio on in the car at 6 o'clock and I drove in, and I can't disagree with any of your callers today. And Paul is absolutely right. And these are just words. This is just fluff. I mean, to come out with the line, smash the gangs, and then do absolutely nothing about it for months and months and months. Why should we believe any politician from any party who says this? It's just not going to happen. These are just words. We need action.
Paul, how have you seen the country change in your lifetime that makes this an issue for you?
It's just obviously 25, 30 years ago. It was kind of normal. But my question to this is: I've got the council estate. Mum, Dad work really hard, and I'm proper conservative.
Yeah.
Work hard, go to work, pay as little tax as you can, and tough on crime, all that, and everything like that. But what changed? Why? I want to know this economically. Would we? If our population would have been what it had been in 97, which is 10 million less, would we be as a country, would we be the same wealth now? Or would we be worse off? I understand people get old decide you need that the next people coming in, but to 10 million, I don't know. Do you understand
well, I agree with you, Paul, and it's about the quality of the 10 million that by which this country has increased. And back in the day, isn't it, Paul, we had a different kind of immigration when I was growing up. We had immigration. I don't remember anyone being against it. You came here to become a British person, to work, to contribute, and to follow the traditions of this country and to follow the laws. I mean, and that's the difference, Paul, is it's the kind of immigration that's changed and the scale has changed.
Of course it has. It hasn't. It may be let's start. It's not a problem, so to speak, but it becomes a funds problem. You can only see it. It's not anybody personal. It's just a general feeling of everything. And
What do you think, Paul, about the worries people have about being called racist if they're concerned about a rapidly changing society they didn't vote for? Is that racist?
On the contrary, isn't it? Where if I tried to go somewhere and there wasn't around and nothing, but I would expect to be turned around straight away because you understand society. And you know, it's like there's respect for the police back in the day. You seen the policeman and whatever. I never used to from, but people used to have have conviction, be worried about them. You're also miss a beat. And that's the same thing about trying to go into somewhere where you're not allowed. You won't do it because you know you're not allowed. So that stays kind of with you. It's not the right thing to do. So therefore, but you know, there you go. We respect policemen anymore. That's the thing. You know, but I just don't know. But the thing is, people look at it. It's always a numbers game. Doesn't matter who it is. It's always a numbers game. Mr. Farage, even before it was trying to get out of Europe, then well before the immigration rise, wasn't it? So, but listen, that's why they're nailed on. Conservatives aren't conservatives no more. Or they're the one election after election just being conservatives, and you've not got that. Tough on crime, low tax, small government, managed immigration. That's what it was until late 90s, and it weren't a problem then.
You're so right, Paul. A brilliant call. Do call me again soon. What a fantastic set of points you've made. Well, next up, the mood music is that Angela Rayner is plotting an extraordinary political comeback. Could she be Britain's next Prime Minister? And if so, what happens under the premiership of Angela Rayner? That's next.
In terms of your question around taxes, there are no additional tax rises needed beyond the ones that I've set out.
Don't need to increase taxes. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
I will not increase your national insurance. I will not increase your VAT, and I will not increase your income tax.
We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean. The economic circumstances have declined, deteriorated since a year ago. We are having to look at taxes and spending.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Today's Sunday Telegraph. Angela Rayner plots move against Starmer in an extraordinary political comeback. She wants to be Prime Minister. I think it's possible. I think in her own way, she's their Boris. So could she have cut through? Could she improve the fortunes of this country? Gemma is in Staffordshire. Good morning, Gemma. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Hi.
Lovely to have you on the show. Well, what do you think of Angela Rayner? Do you think she'd do a better job than Keir Starmer?
Well, in terms of what we need now, okay, we've had him, right? We've had him. We know what it's like to be run by a lawyer. I warned everyone that I could. No, but I did warn everybody. Are you sure you want this? Because, I mean, God.
What happens when you've got a lawyer running the country? What happens, Gemma? What's the problem with it?
Lots of new laws are brought in on the fly. And to be fair, you know, he's good. You can't knock him completely. I mean, he's good at arguing at the toss. But now that we've got this sort of like nightmare situation with the BBC and various other, the royal family and the blah-de-blah-blah, blah, and the institutionalisation of... I mean, I was born in the 70s, mate. Do you know what I mean? When things were very different. But now I'm 50. Can you believe it?
We're the same age, Gemma.
Are you 50? Well, you don't look it.
In fact, I'm 51, I hate to tell you.
I think that, you know, it's time for that woman to sort of say, OK, I was a bit of a nightmare, but she does have something that he hasn't got, apart from the obvious, which is obviously sort of, you know, all that, what's a woman and all that. Not that. She's got something, yeah, that he hasn't got, and I think she would be able to grip the nation. I think she would be able to tell the BBC off better than what my grammar's gone, better than what he could. If you see, oh God,
no, you made your Gemma, you made your point brilliantly. Stay with me. Alex Dyke is in the studio, and I think Gemma is very straight talking, a bit like Angela Rayner.
She is, but you and I disagree over Angela Rayner. I don't think she's got the Boris factor. I think that if you sent her to a G8 summit, the other world leaders would be saying, who's she? What would she just doesn't...
She'd call them all scum, wouldn't she?
Well, she probably would, like she did the Tories. But I just don't think she has anything presidential about her, if you like.
No, but I'm thinking about, like, to win, you know, to get that leadership and maybe even to win an election. But the fact that she shoots from the hip, she's real, she's authentic, and she's not afraid.
Well, she may be promoted inside the Labour Party, but the British public, the voters, already don't trust her because of her. She's got previous, Mark.
Gemma, I'm really glad you enjoyed, you called the show, and thank you so much for that call. I really enjoyed it, actually. Gemma there saying, look, she's not perfect, but there's something about Angela Rayner that is worthy of note, and she could shake things up and certainly, says Gemma, do a better job than Keir Starmer. Steve's in Leeds. Steve, can we talk about the BBC? Does Britain need a national state broadcaster?
I think it needs one, but in a much more condensed, as your earlier participant said, a much more condensed format. They're trying to be Netflix and Amazon, and they can't because the government, the taxpayers can never give them enough money to provide the service that Netflix and Amazon make. So you've got to reduce the service to what it needs. But my point when I rang up was that it doesn't matter which chairman you introduce to the BBC. The BBC is like a microcosm of the government. It's the blob. All the chairman's going to do is sit there and rule over an organisation that's woke, that won't change, that's riddled with ideology. And unless you give that person the power to make effective change, if their CEO joins a company that's failing, he has the power to remove people who are failing within the company. Nobody ever gets sacked at the BBC, Mark, for whatever. Yeah, unless they get caught kiddie fiddling, they don't get sacked.
Well, you're right, and even then they stay on full pay, don't they, for a few months before they get chucked out. I mean, Steve, stay with me on that because Alex Dyke, I mean, that might be call of the day, right? It's a very high bar today on the show. But Steve puts it very succinctly when he says the BBC is the blob.
Yeah, there's... I mean, if we take can I just quickly go back to the Trump thing? Because I've done a little bit of homework for you, Mark, very, very quickly. The $5 billion is £3.8 billion. The BBC haven't got that. If he goes for £1 billion, that's $760 million. The BBC haven't got that. What the BBC have got in cash reserves is £477 million. I just thought you might be interested to know that.
Well, it's a mega bit of things. You know what, Steve? I wish we could talk longer, but I need to get to to Elaine in Bournemouth. Thank you for your call, Steve. We'll speak soon. Elaine, good morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Hello, Mark. I watch you every weekend.
Oh, well, listen, I'm honoured, and thank you so much for doing that, Elaine. There is no show without you. What do you make about the immigration conversation we've been having today? Because it's another hot topic.
I'm a little worried about the refugee sort of thing. These clips that I've seen on, Talk and TV News.
Yeah.
Channels. I haven't watched Good Morning Britain and all those for 5 years since it started going on all about the COVID stuff and everything.
Yeah,
so
propaganda.
Yeah, I gave them up at the time, and then I found TV News, and then I found Talk. TV. It was always on radio, but then, what I was going to say, because I haven't got long, have I? So.
No, but we'll give you space, Elaine. I'm not going to rush you. You are my VIP this morning. Take your time.
Well, they're all coming on votes, unidentified, young men, fighting age, what we call fighting age. They should be in their country fighting for it, shouldn't they, really, rather than coming over here?
You're absolutely right. It's strange, isn't it, their motivations?
Well, it is. And not only that, they seem to be all... I have just watched a clip off what Kevin O'Sullivan got on there about the hotel worker, and there was women and children in that one, but not many. They were nearly all men, like they are. And what's confusing is it seems to be all fighting age men. They don't appear to be refugees. They don't look as though they're refugees. They're obviously having a good time and video and everything. And not only that, they say about this protesting, and I can't seem to find this on any of the channels. What are they protesting if they don't have any paperwork? You know, you can't protest people without paperwork.
Elaine, common sense, which seems to have evaded this and previous administrations. Elaine, call me again soon. Really enjoyed that conversation in Bournemouth there, which has been impacted, by the way, by illegal immigration regarding the accommodation of people, and it's affected the safety of locals. The bottom line is, if you're coming from France, it's a great debate. Are you a refugee or an economic migrant? I'm delighted to say that the brilliant Peter Cardwell is up next. And Peter, you got some star bookings on the show today.
Yes, we've got the